Sugata Srinivasaraju, who is a very close friend of mine and a well-known author as well as a journalist. The book that is being released today brings back memories, good as well as bad memories. In my opinion, during those 18 months period, the Constitution of India did not work at all. People suffered for lack of fundamental rights given to them, the freedom of speech, freedom of movement. This emergency, according to me, was declared to save the chair of one person only. And that person came from a family which had already ruled this country for nearly 15 years. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this is a wonderful book which all of you, I'm sure, will read and remember your days during that period compared to the contents of the book.
Indira Gandhi was a complex person shaped by complex history and personal circumstances. She could be gracious and she could also be dictator. She was both, but gracious to whom and dictator to whom is the question.
ಅವತ್ತು ಸಾವಿರಾರು ಮಂದಿ ಮಾನವ ಹಕ್ಕುಗಳ ಹೋರಾಟಗಾರರನ್ನು, ಪತ್ರಕರ್ತರನ್ನು ಸೆರೆಮನೆಗೆ ತಳ್ಳಿ ವಿಚಾರಣೆ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಅನೇಕ ತಿಂಗಳುಗಳು 19 ತಿಂಗಳುಗಳು ಅವರು ಸೆರೆಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ. Pressure on emergency, pressure on Indira Gandhi to lift emergency. He quotes, he says it's just speculation in the absence of specific information and material which is still classified. We cannot hazard a conclusion that there was any influence of what happened outside the country on Indira Gandhi.
Point is, what did the emergency achieve? Once they taste the blood of unrestrained power, they become its addicts. It's not just the unrestrained power, it is the blood of power. Sugata has summed up the theme very beautifully in the title, The Conscience Network.
ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ಕೃತಿಯನ್ನು ರಚಿಸುವಾಗ ಸುಗತಾ ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸರಾಜಿಯವರು ಅಗಾಧವಾದ ಪರಿಶ್ರಮದ ಮೂಲಕ, ಸಂಶೋಧನೆಯ ಮೂಲಕ ವಿಷಯವನ್ನು ವಿವಿಧ ಮೂಲಗಳಿಂದ ಸಂಗ್ರಹಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. This book is written not by a journalist but a journalist, a writer, a historian, a researcher and a poet.
The Conscience Network, a chronicle of resistance to a dictatorship.
May I please request the chief guests of today, Justice Santosh Hegde, Mr. Chiranjeev Singh, Professor K. Marula Siddhappa, Mr. A.V.S. Nambudiri, and the author, Mr. Sugata Srinivasaraju, to please take the chairs on the stage. Can Mr. Mahantesh and Mr. Mallikarjun kindly accompany the guests to the stage? On behalf of the Paradarshak Media Foundation and Penguin Random House India, I heartily welcome the chief guests, the three principal protagonists of the book who are in the audience, and all of you who are very special and dear to us. We promise to make this book launch and discussion program a very meaningful evening. I'm very sure it will be filled with insight and reflection. Before I proceed to introduce the chief guest and the author, let me inform you that this program is structured into two halves. In the first half, we'll have the launch of the book and the chief guest will speak. In the second half, we'll have the book's protagonists interact with the author. We'll finish it in time so that you will not be delayed for your dinner. The one thing that is common to all the chief guests here on the stage is that they are all conscionable individuals who have in their chosen fields put public and national interest ahead of everything else and have strived to protect our democratic values. They really do not need an introduction, but let me do a quick formality. Justice Santosh Hegde has not just kept the conscience of our state as the most respected and effective Lokayukta in the history of the institution, but has also kept the conscience of our nation as the judge of the Supreme Court of India. He is the son of a great father, Mr. K.S. Hegde, who was the Speaker of the Lok Sabha after the emergency, and before that, a judge of the Supreme Court. Can we please have a huge round of applause for Justice Santosh Hegde? Mr. Chiranjeev Singh has been one of Karnataka's most learned and distinguished bureaucrats. He's a polyglot and a remarkable scholar and writer too. We would love to claim that he is first a Kannadiga and then a Punjabi. His contributions to the world of art and culture are very rich, and he was also India's ambassador to the UNESCO in the 1990s. A huge round of applause for him, please. Professor K. Marula Siddhappa, besides being a great teacher, researcher, writer, and a historian of the Kannada theatre, has been a public intellectual with impeccable credentials. He has never shied away from speaking up and speaking his mind for the larger common good. We are absolutely delighted that he is here today. A huge round of applause for Professor K. Marula Siddhappa. Mr. A.V.S. Nambudiri has kept our conscience through his writing and editorials for decades in the Deccan Herald. He belongs to that rare breed of scholar journalists in our country who not just chase great ideas and grapple with the difficult bends of history in real time, but also know how to articulate those ideas and bends with a marvelous use of language. A huge round of applause for Mr. A.V.S. Nambudiri. Thank you all, sirs, for coming here today. There could not have been a more appropriate set of guests to speak on the Conscious Network. Before I request Justice Hegde to release the book and speak, let me introduce the author and the book. Sugata Srinivasaraju is a journalist, author, and columnist who has written for 3 decades at the intersection of politics, culture, and contemporary history. In the past, he has edited newspapers, magazines, run television channels, and digital news platforms. Over the years, he has been a Chevening Scholar in the United Kingdom, a Fellow of the Aspen Institute in the United States, and a Homi Bhabha Fellow in India. Sugata's books, among others, include Strange Burdens, The Politics and Predicaments of Rahul Gandhi, Furrows in a Field, The Unexplored Life of H.D. Deve Gowda, Pickles from Home, The Worlds of a Bilingual, and Keeping Faith with the Mother Tongue, The Anxieties of a Local Culture. Kittale Nerale Perale, Avasarakke Ettukida Matu Baraha, is his award-winning Kannada book. His book of translation, Phoenix and Other Mime Plays, won him the Karnataka Sahitya Academy Prize. Can we have a huge round of applause for Sugata Srinivasaraju? His latest book, The Conscience Network, A Chronicle of Resistance to a Dictatorship, is a parallel history of resistance to Indira Gandhi's dictatorial rule between 1975 and 1977. It marks 50 years of the proclamation of internal emergency in India, where the constitution was trampled upon, civic rights were suspended, and general election was postponed. The events in the book unfold entirely in the United States of America, surrounded by the echoes of emergency action in India. The book has an intimate historiographic style and is narrated through the lives, actions, and worldviews of the chosen protagonists who, with perseverance and principle, constructed a classic Gandhian movement against the emergency. The book not only tracks political developments, ideological debates, and socio-cultural context of the time, but also records how American pacifists, Quakers, civil rights activists, academics, authors, senators, and congressmen came together in solidarity to form a network of conscience to save India's democracy. Amidst this, a quiet thread in the book is the story of an Indian diaspora in the United States that had just about begun staring at a horizon of influence. It is widely believed that one of the factors that pushed Indira Gandhi to end the emergency in 1977 and call for a general election was international pressure. Being Jawaharlal Nehru's daughter, it is said that she was sensitive to how she was being perceived overseas, and after a point thought it was counterproductive to play dictator. However, this book does not get into such conjectures or presumptions, but endeavors to paint a true and complex picture of the time. The narrative here is fused with a diligent study of personal papers and archival material in India and overseas that has neither been accessed or assessed till now. The publishers of the book, Penguin Random House India, have said that this book is yet another offering from an author whose books have been applauded for their uncommon insight, intellectual bandwidth, and a fine literary style. I congratulate the author on all your behalves, and now request Justice Hegde to release the book and give us his thoughts on the book and the emergency.
Dignitaries in the dais, Mr. Chiranjeevi Singh, Mr. K. Marula Siddhappa, AVS Nambudri, editor of the book, Sugata Srinivasaraju, the dignitaries present in the audience. I deem it an honor to be here in the program of releasing this book, and also a pleasure for me to be in this program, mainly because of the author of this book, Sugata Srinivasaraju, who is a very close friend of mine and a well-known author as well as a journalist, and also for the reason the book that is being released today brings back memories, good as well as bad memories, a book which I think should be read by most of the people to understand the realities that took place in taking the decision of declaring the emergency as well as calling off the emergency. The author has done a tremendous job of collecting the material to find out the reason why the emergency was declared in this country, as also the atrocities and other activities that took place during emergency, as well as the post-emergency situation in the country. He has also mentioned in the book the activities of Indians settled down abroad, especially in the United States, who took a great part in creating a sense amongst the local Indians in America as well as in India to fight against the declaration of emergency and also the consequences thereof. In the course of these proceedings, you'll be knowing more about the contents of the book, so I wouldn't try to go further than that, what I have already said. But I would like to place before you certain personal knowledge of mine during the declaration of emergency and thereafter during the pendency of the emergency. I was a lawyer who had put in 10 years practice. I was then about 35 years old. And on the 26th morning of June 1975, we all came to know that for the second time, I came to know it is a second time emergency after going through the book. Earlier, there was an emergency after the Chinese War, but not as severe as the one that was declared in 1975. And on that day, it so happened that 4 members of parliament, Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Mr. L.K. Advani, Mr. Madhu Dandavate, S.N. Mishra, were in Bangalore on parliamentary work, and they were arrested on the 26th of June, 1975. There was nobody agreeing to defend them, Along, of course, they were detained with hundreds of other local leaders as well as the young students also, who were likely to create a movement against the declaration of emergency. All of them were detained in Bangalore, some of them, and others in the local jails with the thing. And one of them, a local leader, Ramakrishna Hegde, who later became the chief minister, was detained in Ballari jail, though the practice was to detain the detainees in the place where their family was there. But in this particular case, an exception was made. He was kept in Ballari jail so that he'll not have the pleasure of the weekly meeting with the family also. Similarly, others who came from Delhi for parliamentary work, they were also kept in Bangalore. And after some time, they were defended by Mr. Justice Rama Joyce, who's no more, who was then, of course, not a judge. And he had certain affiliation with RSS. So within a short while, he was also detained, and they had no lawyer to appear. At that point of time, I was approached to appear for them, and I agreed to appear for them. And it so happened that the jail was then situated between my office and the High Court. So my journey to the High Court always had a stopover at the jail, that I could meet them every day and talk to them about the things that were happening outside jail and everything. It so happened, when the matter was listed for final hearing, I thought I should not take the risk of arguing the case myself, because it was a matter of international recognition. So I traveled between Bombay, Chennai, and Delhi, requesting the senior lawyers to come and argue that we'll look after the expenses and the thing. In that process, I met Mr. Soli Sorabji in Mumbai and requested him to come and argue the case in Bangalore. Then I went to Delhi. I met Mr. Shanti Bhushan, who actually was responsible for the declaration of emergency, being a lawyer appearing for Raj Narayan in the election case at Allahabad. He also agreed to come. Then I came to Chennai and asked Mr. Venugopal, who later became the Attorney General of India, to come and argue the matter. And all of them came and argued, and we succeeded. The Karnataka High Court declared the declaration of emergency as an act in malice. And they declared that emergency should be lifted forthwith and all, but that did not happen. Per contra, the Attorney General of India came to Bangalore, and he appeared in the court and mentioned to the court of Chief Justice, then Justice Govind Bhatt, that the declaration of emergency was a wrong act on the part of the central government. He has advised them to withdraw the emergency. At the same time, he has also advised the state government to release the detainees. So all of us were very happy that such a advice was given by the Attorney General of India. So I ran to the jail, to tell the detainees that they will be released shortly and they should be going home anytime. But to my surprise, when I went there, none of them were there. I mean, those from Karnataka were kept inside the jail, and the 4 detainees came from Delhi. They were kept separately somewhere inside, and also that nobody could contact them. Then I came to know that the Attorney General came and advised that they should be released, but in reality, emergency was not lifted. They were not released. They were transported to Delhi by a special aircraft so that they'll be kept in Tihar jail in Delhi. And I ran back to the court and mentioned to the Chief Justice that what the Attorney General told the court is not correct at all. As a matter of fact, he has misled the court from passing any order in regard to the bail of these people. And the Chief Justice was very, very angry. And by the time, having made the statement, the Attorney General had left the court also. Then he directed that all the 4 detainees who were taken back to Delhi should be brought back to Bangalore. And other detainees were also should be given the privileges that a political prisoner has in the thing. And that created a sense of misunderstanding, if not not believing the arguments of the central government, which contributed to the judgment of the court of the Karnataka High Court in 1976. But very unfortunately, the two judges who delivered the judgment were transferred from Bangalore. One was to be the next Chief Justice of Karnataka High Court, Justice D.M. Chandrasekhar. He was sent to Allahabad as a puisne judge, and the other judge, Justice Sadananda Swamy, was transferred to Guwahati High Court. And in the course of emergency, such things happened regularly. The judges were not inclined to favor the government, were transferred from different courts to places far away, practically as a punishment because they did not support the government of the day, central government of the day. Such was the thing. Similarly, students were detained and kept, and they were not allowed to take examinations, so they will lose one more year in the academic career of them and all. But I appeared for them, and I requested the court to give them an opportunity to appear in the examination hall and come back to the jail, which the court agreed and gave them that opportunity of not losing the year and writing their examination. Similarly, I moved an application on behalf of Mr. Ramakrishna Hegde that he should be transferred to Bangalore, and that application was also allowed, the thing. But unfortunately, the highest court in India reversed that judgment, saying declaration of emergency was an act of the executive. It cannot be reversed so simply as has been done by the High Court of Karnataka. In my opinion, during those 18 months period, the Constitution of India did not work at all. People suffered for lack of fundamental rights given to them, the freedom of speech, freedom of movement. In reality, such an emergency had never occurred in a democratic India, which came into existence on 26th of January 1950. Ladies and gentlemen, most of us who were there have seen the consequences of emergency and how emergency came to be withdrawn and what reason, which is described in the book, is mainly because of the fact that the government of the United States put pressure on the government of India that they should withdraw this emergency, which was not really a thing which could have been there in a democratic setup at all. Such is the content of this book, which according to me should be made available to the youth of this country who were not born during the period of emergency, so that they will know what exactly could happen when people who take personal interest in the political matters and all. This emergency, according to me, was declared to save the chair of one person only. And that person came from a family which had already ruled this country for nearly 15 years. Think of the people who died in custody during that period. Think of their family. What is that they have done to suffer this? Nobody could talk loudly also. That was emergency. The movements were restricted. A large section of the population was under vigilance. Those 18 months or so really left, at least in people of my age, an impression that democracy can always be overruled. We, the people of India, can never be sure of our rights. I hope such a situation does not arise in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this is a wonderful book, which all of you, I'm sure, will read and remember your days during that period compared to the contents of the book. I wish Sugata Srinivasaraju all the very best, and this book should become very popular. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
I thank Justice Hegde for his address. May I now request the author of the book, Sugata Srinivasaraju, to please address the gathering.
I Thank you all for coming here today. The Conscience Network, my latest book, was launched in New Delhi last week, but the feeling I have is that until the book is unwrapped in Bangalore, it has not really seen light. Like the Kannada writer Chandrasekhar Patil, with whose poem From the Emergency Days this book begins, had once spoken of a lobby Nagara and a Gulabi Nagara. Now that we have left Delhi behind, we could conveniently say that Delhi is a lobby Nagara and Gulabi Nagara is our home. That's Bangalore. Thank you. Home is home. Home turf is always special. In one of my earlier books, Pickles from Home, The Worlds of a Bilingual, published in 2012, I had asked, quote, "Is it true that whatever may be our success in the outside world, the ultimate celebration and the final preservation happens only in our home or hometown? Why do we often hear people say that they want to get back to their roots? Does it finally mean nothing if you cannot connect with your own people? Is this a great civilizational formula to provide security to human beings? Why do we always think that the final resting place should always be one's hometowns? At times, haven't we seen old graves in alien lands being shifted to secure homelands? How much ever we may globalize, can we really escape the local? Why is it that your pickle is always from home?" Unquote. So this is what I had written in 2012. Recalling this paragraph also resonates with the story of my latest book, The Conscience Network, a chronicle of resistance to a dictatorship. It is the celebration at home of the courageous and principled actions of what the protagonists of my book did in faraway lands. Thousands of miles away from home, it was not spoken about or written about until it was discovered for this book 50 years later. The papers were all buried in archives, attics, and morgues in distant corners of the world, but have now been brought to light and given life in our hometowns. When I was writing my talking points this morning, I was rather thrilled to realize this thread that continued in my writing. It was as if a theoretical question I had asked in 2012 had found substantiation and proof in 2025. I also chuckled, thinking of my protagonists and me. They're all here. Professor Anand Kumar is here, Dr. Ravi Chopra is here, Mr. S.R. Hiremat is here. I chuckled thinking of my book's protagonists and me. It was like the Italian playwright Luigi Pirandello's 6 characters in search of an author, although not so absurd. And it was me who went in search of them in the case of this book and asked them to complete their stories. The completion of their stories is what you will find in this book. Now, I came with a prepared script because I have a tendency to go on talking, and in Delhi I extended my time. So I told myself that I'll be a little disciplined and come with a written script. So I'm just, please be happy that I'm reading out. So I'm really grateful that you have all come here today. I'm especially grateful that Justice Santosh Hegde is here. He is an icon of our times. An applause please. I did not know him so much as a Supreme Court judge, but like millions of others in Karnataka, I became familiar with him because of his extraordinary public service as a Lokayukta. That institution that institution has lost its halo ever since he stepped down. And I should also incidentally mention here that the organizer of this program, the Paradarshak Foundation, which is run by G. Mahantesh, after Mr. Hegde had stepped down, wrote 50 stories under my editorship in the Asianet and Kannada Prabha, which exposed the corruption in the office of the Lokayukta. And, a lot of people had to go to jail, and finally the Lokayukta had to resign. So that has been the state of affairs with that institution ever since an icon like Justice Santosh Hegde has stepped down. It's a very sorry state of affairs. And you are probably reading all that's happening now in the papers. I was happy to be writing for the Outlook magazine when Justice Hegde was neck deep in unearthing humongous illegalities in the iron ore mines of Karnataka. Justice Hegde did big things that brought about a huge difference. He inspired us. I have the tiny satisfaction to have called the Ballari illegalities as the Reddy Republic in what was the first ever national coverage of the mining scam. The first ever criminal defamation case in the mining scam was against me and my editor, Vinod Mehta. One day, when Vinod was having his beer in the afternoon, he suddenly said, "Why don't we go and see Justice Hegde?" I said, "Sir, he's a big man. It may be difficult to get an appointment." He said, "Let's barge in." That was Vinod's attitude. So I took Mr. Vinod Mehta to see Justice Hegde. And I remember the warmth of the meeting, but not the details. It is that mining scam that is common between Justice Hegde, Mr. S.R. Hiremat, who is one of the protagonists of this book, and I, from discussing corruption to reflecting on the conscience network, my relationship with Mr. S.R. Hiremat has only deepened. He's not, a lot of friends know this, he's not very easy to deal with, but I have never seen him go against his conscience and the collective conscience. That is very true about Justice Hegde also. Mr. Chiranjeev Singh, the other guest here today, has been an elder of our family. He has been involved in all the books I have published since 2004. That is from 21 years ago. I have no words to thank him for his continuing generosity. I have always said that he is like the Kabir painting that hangs in his living room. And I forget if it is by Paresh Maiti or Paresh Hazra. It's like, he's like that Kabir painting that hangs in his living room. Soft, saintly, yet with a stubborn resolve to act compassionately at all times. That is Mr. Chiranjeev Singh. When I dedicated my previous book to him, the Rahul Gandhi book, I borrowed lines from poet Bendre to describe him. You can guess which poem that was. I'll just read the English translation and probably give you a hint in Kannada later. I dedicated to him and I said, "In an easterly home, when the doors open, light flows out to wash the world and fill it with graciousness." So that was my dedication line to Mr. Chiranjeev Singh. And this was this very famous Kannada poem by Bendre, "Moodala maneya muttina neerina yarakava hoida, nonnane yarakava hoida, bagilu teredu ಬೆಳಕು ಹರಿದು ಜಗವೆಲ್ಲ ತೊಯ್ದ ನನ್ನನೆ ಜಗವೆಲ್ಲ ತೊಯ್ದ. That is Chiranjeev Singh for me. But he has also a notorious reputation to be here on the stage today. And that is, he was the chief censor of Karnataka during the emergency. But he has been telling me that he never censored anything because the media submitted itself without any censorship. So he was the chief censor of Karnataka as well. Again, Professor K. Marula Siddhappa has been family. more than family to us. The bonds that our family share from my father's time, he was also my father's teacher, till now has only deepened. His son, the very well-known filmmaker Chaitanya, and I went to the University of Hyderabad together around the same time. But outside the family connection, what has made me admire Professor KMS is his rational and no-nonsense approach to things, both intellectual and non-intellectual, towards life and towards life in general. Absolutely no-nonsense, rational approach. He has always argued for public causes. Ever since I have been a child, I remember he has always argued for public causes and the public good, and has kept the conscience of the Kannada literary world alongside people like P. Lankesh. He was, until recently, an indefatigable contributor to the letters to the editor column in newspapers. I used to always open the newspapers and would be delighted to see his letter on one issue or the other. If he writes no more, that is because there is little space for an independent public intellectual like him in the media today. That's a sad thing, but that's true. And I'm just trying to tell you why these guests are here. I have no other reason to be standing here. Because they'll all speak on the book, but I should tell you why they are here. I'm happy now that I get an opportunity to acknowledge that Mr. A.V.S. Nambudri has been a huge formative influence when I began journalism. He was a quiet and gentle mentor in the Deccan Herald newsroom, and one of those who could speak about both Mayakovsky and Mayavati with equal ease and insight. I have always enjoyed the unpretentious confluence of current affairs, culture, and literature in his prose, which, by the way, could never be deciphered when he wrote in longhand. When he wrote in longhand, it would be like a running river. You could never read. But it started sparkling the moment his editorial assistant had typed it up, had put it on paper, typed, and gave you a typed script. When I wrote the Rahul Gandhi book, he made the most brilliant psychological reading of it. He has been threatening, or rather speaking, of writing a book on the tragic design of cricket, historically linking it to the emergence of the Elizabethan tragedy in England. I sincerely hope he does, because it will unsettle a lot of euphoric cricket histories and historians. So I feel blessed that they're all here today, and I will not do much talking on the book because I believe it has to be read, and there are others who will be speaking about it after me. Instead, I will read a small passage from the book. In Delhi, I chose to read about the 4 romances in the book. But today, I will read about how T.N. Cowell, India's ambassador to the United States, romanced with the idea of Indira Gandhi's dictatorship. So in Delhi, I read those 4 romances because, there were people in the audience and on the stage trying to quickly reduce the book to something else, So I just had to rescue my book, so I had lightened the mood in Delhi by reading romances. And I had also read about the romance of Mr. Ravi Chopra and Joe McGowan, who are happily here with us today, and then about S.R. Hiremat and his American wife, Mavis Sigwald, and a couple of others, Leila Kabir and George Fernandez. So I had done that, but here I will be reading this romance of ideas that existed between T.N. Cowell and Indira Gandhi's dictatorship. But before I do the reading, can I request my son, Sumeru, who is in his second year of PhD in cell biology at the Indian Institute of Science, to receive a copy of the book from Mr. Chiranjeev Singh. This book is dedicated to him, and I take the dedication lines for the book from a vachana of the 12th century mystic Allama Prabhu, which has kept me company for years. It was the singing of this great vachana by Mallikarjun Mansur that I was first introduced to this Vachana, and it goes like this. I will read it in Kannada. Sumeru, can you please come up and get a copy from Mr. Chiranjeev Singh? So the dedication lines I gave you the dedication lines that I had written for Mr. Chiranjeev Singh, and the dedication lines for Sumeru in this book is, "For Sumeru, my son, the sky, Mount Meru, and the temple is where one is." So this is from a Vachana of Allama Prabhu, which I'm sure a Kannada audience here will love to listen. So it goes like this. And it's sung beautifully by Mallikarjun Mansur. If you haven't heard the rendering of Mallikarjun Mansur, you've missed something. Please go back and listen to it. Ihaloka, Paraloka taniddalli, Gagana Meru Mandira taniddalli, Sakala Bhuvana taniddalli, Satya Nitya Niranjana Shivatattva taniddalli, Uttarottara Chaturvadaya taniddalli, Chandra Surya Taramandala taniddalli, Antara Mahadantara taniddalli, Swatantra Guheshwara Linga taniddalli. So this is from Allama Prabhu. So now I'll get back to reading from the book. This is from the chapter called A Diplomat on a Mission. So T.N. Cowell was a very interesting character. I try to visualize his behavior and character. And he was very close to the Nehru Gandhi family. He was actually part of the Kashmiri cabal that surrounded Indira Gandhi. And he was also, before he went to Washington in 1973, he was also India's ambassador to USSR. And you will see in my book the letters that he wrote to Indira Gandhi even before she became anything, sharing confidential information with her, calling her, "Oh, my dear Indu, this is what is happening in Soviet Union. Oh, you should come to a holiday to Moscow. Oh, let's go to Kashmir together." That was the kind of relationship. But then gradually when she became Prime Minister, there's a very deferential voice, and he starts addressing her as "Dear Prime Minister." And this is, he's doing this propaganda in America. We hear about propaganda so much these days, but you should read the classic propaganda that T.N. Cowell unleashed in America to understand the kind of machinery Indira Gandhi had to defend her emergency, all the wrong that she had done. So this is T.N. Cowell, and he was an over-enthusiastic character. He would go to, American universities and just take a tape recorder in his hand and he'd say, "I am going to record what I'm going to speak," and then switch on the tape recorder and get a transcript of his speech, get it corrected, make fair copies of it and put it into his file. If that man had not done that, you wouldn't have had this book today. He has in his enthusiasm to serve the Gandhi regime, Indira Gandhi regime, he created such wonderful material, archival material for scholars like us and historians like us. So this was all 50 years ago. So one day, I think he decided to speak. People were calling Indira Gandhi dictator. So he decided to address that question. So I read from that. Is Indira Gandhi a dictator? Meanwhile, during his lecture tour, Cowell was bold enough to deliver a speech on the topic, "Is Mrs. Gandhi really the first woman dictator in the world?" He's asking this question and speaking. Perhaps this was his way of being transparent and taking on the most popular idea or doubt or slander in circulation. He began the lecture by saying that the title made two assumptions. One, that Indira Gandhi was a dictator and there have not been women dictators in the past. Laced with sarcasm, he said that America, in its relatively short history, still did not have a woman president, while India had an ancient tradition of having women in the highest places as equals and partners with their men folk. But he argued that, strange as it may seem, it was a historical fact that no country have women, in no country have women been dictators, even when they occupied thrones in Europe and elsewhere. Then he went on to illustrate how Indira Gandhi fought her rivals, all men, to become the Prime Minister. Perhaps he thought this gender spin might at least drum up support among women in America and within the Indian diaspora. How was she able to do it? This frail, feminine, gentle-looking, soft-spoken woman in her 40s, he asked, and responded to what should have remained a perfect rhetorical question. He said that Indira Gandhi had done it because she was unlike her father, steeped entirely in the Indian mold, and represented the best of Indian womanhood: modesty, pragmatism, sincerity, simplicity, a strong will and determination, an ability to inspire confidence and trust through self-sacrifice and Spartan mode of life. This is Cowell writing. Cowell said that she faced far more difficulties than her father did, yet showed greater courage and clear-sightedness than even he did. So he's clearly putting Indira Gandhi above Jawaharlal Nehru. I don't know how many congressmen know this. Cowell put Indira Gandhi far, far above Jawaharlal Nehru. Cowell argued that no other leader in India had fought as many obscurantists, character assassins, and frustrated politicians. Quote, "The women of India, and I dare say of most countries, are proud of her. The men folk have to grudgingly accept her, but in their male chauvinism must find fault with her by calling her a dictator. I have yet to meet a dictator who could be as gentle and human as Mrs. Gandhi. A dictator is always afraid and acts out of fear, but Mrs. Gandhi is fearless." He then said that a dictator never listens to advice of his colleagues. Perhaps he's assuming that dictators are all men and a woman also is so different, or potential rivals, but his boss was a good listener and consulted opposition leaders in parliament. He's saying all of them were in jail, but he says she consulted opposition leaders in parliament. However, he added that she was not a timid woman who could be cowed down or daunted by the opposition or obstruction. Quote, "Perhaps the one defect in her makeup is that she listens too much, too long, to too many people, in her anxiety to win them over. Sometimes this delays action and allows crisis to develop. This is not the quality of a dictator, but the failing of a true democrat. If a failing it be, but once a crisis has arisen or is about to arise, she deals with it in a firm, calculated, and deliberate manner and shows some of her finest qualities. In fact, she is at her best in a crisis. If this is the quality of a dictator, then I think we could all emulate it. A democrat who cannot be firm, decisive, clear-sighted, and action-oriented is no democrat." So this is Cowell, talking about Indira Gandhi. And I've just read a small passage for you. You'll enjoy reading the rest of the chapter because he's very entertaining. 50 years later, you can't take him obviously very seriously, but he was such a, as they say in Hindi, a chalu fellow, that after the emergency was over, and he had tormented Mr. Anand Kumar, who was sitting here. He had impounded the passport of Hiremat. He had written all kinds of complaints and letters to Indira Gandhi about them. But after the emergency had been lifted and he was writing his memoirs, he went on to say that I had advised her not to clamp the emergency, to lift it. And he also went on to say that, these people were really good. They were really protecting the democracy of India. It was a complete turnaround, but then, he forgot that he had left his papers behind. And that's been a treat to read, sitting in the dingy corners of American archives. So that is the reading, and I'll conclude by just making two statements because I'm often asked, ever since I've written this book, I'm asked two questions, so I'll address those two questions and conclude my talk today. And I will, of course, be in conversation with the protagonists, so you will hear more about the book. Since I'm often asked after writing this book, about a declared emergency then and an undeclared emergency today. I would like to address it as following. Indira Gandhi's emergency was claimed 50 years ago. It happened at a different bend of history. The context and circumstances were different. The nuances of its implementation were different. The complexities of the present cannot be defined by using the crutches of the past entirely. That is what happens when moral equivalences are built, innocuously or deliberately. The past cannot be used to obfuscate the present, and similarly, the present cannot be used to obfuscate the past. These exercises are self-defeating for a democracy. The past can offer a reference, but cannot become a complete analogy. Developing a measure for the present and future using events in history is not an unfamiliar exercise. It happens all the time, either to serve the political exigencies of the present or to frame a genuine anxiety. However, we should be aware that such equivalences are also deep political and propaganda games. Their phraseology is devious. I am of the view that the present should be judged as harshly as possible, but independently. The past cannot be cleverly used to negate the crimes of the present. Similarly, the present cannot be used to negate the crimes of the past. Can there not be independent indictments, is my question. Noam Chomsky, the great American intellectual who incidentally supported the Indians for Democracy movement that Hiremat, Anandji, Ravi, and others, I mean, he was one of the first to write letters to Indira Gandhi, and he met them in his MIT campus in Boston. So he, speaking after 9/11, he speaks about this moral equivalence I just told you about. So he spoke to BBC, and he said, moral equivalence is a term of propaganda. He said it was invented to try to prevent us from looking at acts for which we are responsible. He offers examples when he speaks, and just ask the question. So deriving from that, just ask the question, who does it help when we build a false moral equivalence about the emergency? It only helps the Congress party, which has not regretted the emergency. They have always caveated their responses. That is because it is the dynasty created during the emergency that still controls the party. We should argue for democracy at all times, a more robust one, not become part of the Congress's restoration project or power-seeking project. It is the same as becoming part of many narratives of the BJP, RSS, and the Modi regime. Binaries do not help the cause of democracy. Readers also ask me if Indira Gandhi was not a peculiar contrast of someone who was admired as a strong leader and at the same time called a dictator. Which quality is more true about her is something that I'm asked often when I go to speak. To this, I would like to say that a strong leader is again a term of propaganda. We should not forget that the Congress, with its scaffolding of executive power for many decades, set the narrative, including the narrative where JP was made to look very small. JP was a very principled man, and I'm sure Anandji has more to tell about him. The present regime is only trying to, if the Congress did that, the present regime is only trying to replicate the narrative and build a more muscular one for itself. Democracy's choice cannot be between these two productions and manufacturing. Both establishments have their loyal courtiers who build these narratives. Indira Gandhi was a complex person, shaped by complex history and personal circumstances. She could be gracious and she could also be dictator. She was both, but gracious to whom and dictator to whom is the question. Thank you very much.
I thank Sugata Srinivasaraju for his address. May I now please request Mr. A.V.S. Nambudiri to address the gathering.
Happy to be here, Mr. Justice. Hegde, Sri Chiranjeev Singh, Mr. Maru Sudhapa, my friends, and Sugata. I'm happy to be here with you for the launch of my friend Sugata's book, The Conscience Network, which chronicles the resistance to emergency in America. I have a very remote personal connection with emergency. I had just completed college when emergency was declared and was happening. Some of my friends and others who were running away from the police, I, in fact, had given refuge to some of them in my home for extended periods. Luckily, they were not caught, and I was also not caught. And that is a very remote personal link with emergency. Always the other link is that I have written about emergency at various periods during my journalistic career. And now I've read this book also. Emergency is the most commented upon event in our post-independence history. Every aspect of it has been studied. Books have been written, studies have been made, articles are there. Even last week, when there was the 50th anniversary of emergency was observed, there was a spate of articles. All these generally concentrated on what prompted Indira Gandhi to declare emergency, how it was implemented, and what may have prompted her to go in for elections and lift emergency. There is also a lot of material on the resistance to emergency within the country. But we don't get so much information about the resistance to emergency outside the country, especially in the US and the UK. There was a lot of resistance. There is even a view, as it was mentioned here, that the movement against emergency, the campaign against emergency outside the country may have even been a factor that prompted Indira Gandhi to go in for elections, probably because the most recent book on Indian history that I read was India After Gandhi by Ramchandra Guha. There's a chapter on emergency there. He goes into some detail about whether there was any pressure on Indira Gandhi to lift emergency. He says it's just speculation. In the absence of specific information and material which is still classified, we cannot hazard a conclusion that there was any influence of what happened outside the country on Indira Gandhi. But he quotes Bernard Levin, etc., articles written by persons like Bernard Levin and letters written by Indira Gandhi's friends and probably friends of India about emergency. We do not know whether they had any influence, but perhaps Indira Gandhi was, we know, considered to have been a narcissistic person who was in love with herself. She may have been worried that her image is perhaps suffering. It's actually not her image, what she thought, her idea of what others thought about her. Then that's the image, that's the kind of image. People who are in love with themselves don't really go so much out of themselves to think about what others think about them. But perhaps this may have happened. The reputation as Jawaharlal Nehru's daughter and as a Democrat she may have been worried. But whether this is, but we don't have much information about all this or what happened outside the country that against emergency. It's not just its impact on emergency, but this resistance to emergency outside the country needed to be studied on its own, for its own worth. And that's what I think Sugat has done so well, so comprehensively. We don't have much information about what happened in the US. He has given that in this book. And it's a very comprehensive book. It's a comprehensive account. It's not just a journalist's account. It's not a journalist. Sugat is not just a journalist. This book is written not by a journalist, but a journalist, a writer, a historian, a researcher, and a poet. He traces the history of the resistance to emergency in the US through the lives of some persons who went there, who founded an organization, Indians for Democracy, which was the main vehicle for protests and agitations against democracy in the country. And it's a technique. It's not a straight journalistic technique. It's not a narrative. It's not a straight narrative like we find in other journalistic accounts of events in the world. This is, as he himself says, there is a dramatic element in it. He himself calls the persons who waged this battle against democracy, he calls them dramatis personae. That means he themselves thought this to be a drama. There's a drama. And see, in fact, it's drama. It's with drama. It's with the play that you catch the conscience of the king, not just the king, but the spectators and the readers also. Probably that may have been a reason why this book came in a dramatic form. There is some drama. He calls the protagonists, in fact. You don't know, it's not throughout, it's not a drama, but there is some dramatic elements in that. In fact, I was particularly struck by a dramatic tool, which is often used in dramas. It is, see, even in a play, sometimes the narrator, the playwriter just steps back and says, see, this is, he takes himself out of the drama, out of the event, and then introduces the characters. Sugat, at least in the early parts of the book, he has stepped away from the narrative and says, this character, we'll see them later. This other character, it's not, he moves out of the flow of the narrative and introduces this. This is, in fact, a very, very remarkable dramatic technique. Brecht has used it, Bertolt Brecht. He, when the play is staged, he comes off the stage and tells the spectators, please see, this is only a play. Please don't think this is real. This is only a play. Don't be deluded by this. He thought this impact enhanced the impact of the play because identification of the reader with the play did actually hinder the communication of the play. Probably it may have helped. This particular dramatic tool may have helped in making the story more impactful. That's my reading. I'm not sure. I don't know if Sugat consciously thought of this tool also. Now, before I come to the contents of the book, I would like to talk about its form. This is, I told you, it's not a straight journalistic account. It's an account of a writer, of a researcher, and a poet also. We know poetry is the finest form of verbal expression. Drama is the most effective form of communication. We find a combination of drama and poetry here in the book. There is not a single page where you don't see a beautiful turn of phrase. And I sometimes wondered where these beautiful words were minted, in what forms these exquisite words were minted. And that, the combination of drama and this poetry, see, like normally you don't see poetry in journalism, poetry, they don't mix well. Journalism and poetry, they don't mix. But then here we see that, and that has helped the book, I suppose, because, Mr. Maral Siddhappa would know about that. My poem, not drama and poetry, when they combine, they are the best form of communication. We say Natakantam Kavitwam, Natakam and Kavita, when they combine, that's the highest, that's the acme of communication. That's about the form. Now about the contents of the book. This has been designed as the experiences of the persons who founded an organization. The story is told through their lives. These are persons who were in the US, who went to the US, who were idealists, young people who had they were students or young professionals who were not political, who had ideas about the country, who had ideas about the development. Their ideas of development were different from the mainstream ideas that we had in India, and then they were sympathetic to the movement that was happening in the country, the Jayaprakash Narayan, which challenged the established view of development. But it was when they were campaigning on that time, when they engrossed with that development idea, that suddenly emergency happened, and they founded this organization and fought against it. And I don't want to go into all these details. I hope you all will read this book. But a couple of things that we have to notice is this fight, is at the personal level, and it was at the level of the organization. All these persons who started the fight, they evolved. They started as freedom fighters for the country's freedom from emergency. But they evolved into greater social beings. They were committed to a greater social idea. And that is the evolution. That's the evolution that happened during the months of their resistance. And this is the path, this is the evolution of human beings. They grew beyond themselves, beyond their own individuals. That's the thing. We grow. See what happens when you are part of a struggle, when you are evolving as a human being, you reach a higher level of existence. You have a higher goal. That at the individual level it happened, and I believe it happened at the collective level with the organization also. The organization which had first the goal of resisting emergency, later evolved into an organization committed to the bigger goals, the universal ideas of human rights. And that also, at the level of the organization also, this evolution was here. This is actually the end of all human activity. Whether it's an individual, whether it's an organization, you go beyond that particular level, you reach a higher level, you take a wider level of relations with the society. And that's what happened with both the individuals and with the organization. And also, see, Sugat gives a very comprehensive account. He gives the social and political situation in the US and in India, and in fact the world itself, wherever it's in the way. When I started reading the book, in fact, I started wondering whether all this was really relevant for what I thought was the theme of the book. But later, towards the end of the book, I found everything fell into place. All the details fell into place, and it promoted that idea, and it enhanced that idea, and made that idea more effective. Otherwise, we would not have got such a comprehensive account of of what happened in the US. And that is, it's not just it's the comprehensive nature of the book, but all the details had a particular purpose. They enhanced the idea of the book. I also would like to compare the book with Sugat's earlier book, Strange Burdens, that's about Rahul Gandhi, we all know. In that book, in fact, he was writing about the struggles of a person, of an individual in dealing with the world. He was non-judgmental, I suppose, but he was sympathetic to his protagonist in that book. In this book, he is both sympathetic, he is judgmental. He is not on the side of emergency. He has sympathies with the characters, and the looming figure of Mrs. Gandhi. I mean, she is, in fact, she is also a dramatic. But she is a character in the book. She looms large in the book. She is a presence from the first page of the book to the last page. But he is not sympathetic to her. He is sympathetic to the people who fought the emergency, and the judgment is there. But then what we should notice is this writer's style of writing. Sugat has written books before. He has written about two characters before, two personalities. One about Devagowda, then about Rahul Gandhi. Now about 4-5 characters who created a movement. So, see, it's a way of looking at history. You are looking at history through some people. He's not just writing about their characters, he is writing about the history that envelops them, about the times in which they lived, and about the world in which they inhabit. This is a way of looking at the world through characters, through people. That's a more human history. That's not just an objective recounting of history. You are looking at through relations between people and history. That's human history. In fact, you say all writing, we say, is either one person's, it's about one person's dealing with the world, or more than one person's dealings with the world. See, all writing which has happened in the world can be categorized. Here we have got both these characteristics. I hope we will get more of such histories from Sugat. And I'm sure we'll all gain by reading this book. I have a couple of questions. I got a couple of questions also after reading the book. One is, now this book gives us some information about the vindictive actions taken by the government against the people who were fighting emergency. A scholarship was withdrawn. Some passports were cancelled. All this happened. I was wondering, see, this is what an authoritarian regime does to people who are fighting it. But did it happen only in the US? I was wondering whether it happened in India also. It happens, authoritarian governments go after the family members of the families of people or friends or relatives to put pressure on them. I don't know whether it happened. It's possible it could have happened. I was wondering, but there is no mention of that in the book. I don't know whether it was there. Then another question was, see, there is a lot of information about the channels through which this organization got information from India about various things, about constitutional amendments which were happening later, etc. These channels are not very clear. I don't know, but not that I don't know whether it would have had any relevance, but there are these channels of communication between people in India and who gave information to the people to the fighters in Indians for Democracy. I'm not sure. I saw something. I don't know if I missed it. Another point was, another question probably, see, except perhaps a person who was a key figure in the resistance, who was from Karnataka, most other persons were from the north. There are not many from the south in this resistance. Of course, I saw the name of one Krishnamurti, perhaps one Raju also, who I suppose was something. I was wondering why this was, whether it was dominated from the north. Because I was wondering about this because, you know, in the response to emergency also, there was this division in the country. While in the elections, Indira Gandhi and the Congress were totally rejected by the north, the south supported her. I don't know. The activities, this reflection, there was a reflection of this in the activities of the organization of the resistance in the country also, in America also. I won't talk for long. See, last time when G.N. Devi released and launched Sugat's book, he said, I am proud to be here, to be a part of this function. I am proud to be even in Bangalore, where this person is. He said that. I share that sentiment also. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nambudri, for your address. May I please request K. Marula Siddhappa to address the gathering?
ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ದಿ ಕಾನ್ಸಿಯನ್ಸ್ ನೆಟ್ವರ್ಕ್ ಕೃತಿಯನ್ನು ರಚಿಸಿರುವ ಗೆಳೆಯ ಶ್ರೀ ಸುಗತಾ ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸರಾಜು ಅವರೇ, ಜಸ್ಟಿಸ್ ಎನ್ ಸಂತೋಷ್ ಹೆಗ್ಡೆ ಅವರೇ, ಶ್ರೀಮಾನ್ ಚಿರಂಜೀವಿ ಸಿಂಗ್ ಅವರೇ, AVS ನಂಬೂದಿರಿ ಅವರೇ ಮತ್ತು ಈ ಕೃತಿಯ ಪ್ರಮುಖ ಪಾತ್ರಗಳಾದ ರವಿ ಚೋಪ್ರಾ, ಆನಂದ್ ಕುಮಾರ್ ಮತ್ತು SR ಹಿರೇಮಠ್ ಅವರೇ, ಗೆಳೆಯರೇ ಮತ್ತು ಸೋದರಿಯರೇ, ಕಾನ್ಸಿಯನ್ಸ್ ನೆಟ್ವರ್ಕ್ ಪುಸ್ತಕವನ್ನು ಪ್ರಕಟಿಸುವ ಮೂಲಕ ಸುಗತಾ ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸರಾಜು ಅವರು 3 ಮಹತ್ವದ ಗ್ರಂಥಗಳನ್ನು ನಮಗೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಒಂದು ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ವಾತಂತ್ರ್ಯೋತ್ತರ ಭಾರತದ ಚರಿತ್ರೆಗೆ ಆಕರವಾಗುವಂತಹ 3 ಮಹತ್ವದ ಗ್ರಂಥಗಳು ಇವು. ಮೊದಲನೆಯ 2 ಗ್ರಂಥಗಳು ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರದ 2 ನಾಯಕರ ಕುರಿತಂತಹ ಗ್ರಂಥಗಳು, ದೇವೇಗೌಡರನ್ನು ಕುರಿತು ಮತ್ತು ರಾಹುಲ್ ಗಾಂಧಿಯವನ್ನ ಕುರಿತು. ಈಗ ಪ್ರಕಟವಾಗಿರೋದು ಒಂದು ಚಾರಿತ್ರಿಕ ಸಂದರ್ಭ. ಎಮರ್ಜೆನ್ಸಿ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಸ್ವಾತಂತ್ರ್ಯೋತ್ತರ ಭಾರತದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಮುಖ ಘಟ್ಟ ಮತ್ತು ನಿರ್ಣಾಯಕ ಘಟ್ಟ. ಆ ಸಂದರ್ಭದ ಹಿನ್ನೆಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಕೃತಿ ಬಂದಿದೆ. ಈ ಕೃತಿ ಮತ್ತು ಹಿಂದಿನ 2 ಕೃತಿಗಳ ಮೂಲಕ ಸುಗತಾ ಅವರು ಒಬ್ಬ ಪ್ರಮುಖ ವೈಚಾರಿಕ ಬರಹಗಾರರಾಗಿ, ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಬರೀತಿರುವಂತಹ ಪ್ರಮುಖ ವೈಚಾರಿಕ ಬರಹಗಾರರಾಗಿ ಹೊರಹೊಮ್ಮಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ಅವರನ್ನು ನಾನು ಮೊದಲನೇದಾಗಿ ನಿಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರ ಪರವಾಗಿ ಅಭಿನಂದಿಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಈ ಪುಸ್ತಕವನ್ನು ಓದಿದಾಗ ಮೊದಲು ಹೊಳೆಯುವ, ಈ ಪುಸ್ತಕ ಮಾತ್ರ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಹಿಂದಿನ 2 ಪುಸ್ತಕಗಳನ್ನು ನಾನು ಓದಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ಕೃತಿಯನ್ನು ರಚಿಸುವಾಗ ಸುಗತ ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸರಾಜಿಯವರು ಅಗಾಧವಾದ ಪರಿಶ್ರಮದ ಮೂಲಕ, ಸಂಶೋಧನೆಯ ಮೂಲಕ ವಿಷಯವನ್ನು ವಿವಿಧ ಮೂಲಗಳಿಂದ ಸಂಗ್ರಹಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಅದು ಭಾಳ ಮೊದಲು ಕಣ್ಣಿಗೆ ಕಟ್ಟುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ವಿಚಾರ. ಎಷ್ಟು ಪರಿಶ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಹಾಕಿದೆ. ಬರೀ ಪ್ರತಿಭೆಯಿಂದ ಯಾವುದೂ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ವೈಚಾರಿಕ ಕೃತಿಗಳನ್ನು ಬರೆಯುವಾಗ ಪರಿಶ್ರಮ ಭಾಳ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಸಂಶೋಧನೆ ಭಾಳ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ತಮಗೆ ದೊರೆತ ಮಾಹಿತಿಯನ್ನು ಒಂದು ಕ್ರಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಜೋಡಿಸುವಲ್ಲಿ, ಅದನ್ನು ನಿರೂಪಿಸುವಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ವಿಶಿಷ್ಟತೆ ಇದೆ. ಈ ಕೃತಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಸೃಜನಶೀಲತೆ ಇದೆ. ಸೃಜನಶೀಲ ಲೇಖಕ ಒಬ್ಬ ಸಾಧಿಸಬಹುದಾದಂತಹ ಸಾಧನೆಯನ್ನು ಇಂತಹ ವೈಚಾರಿಕ ಕೃತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸಾಧಿಸೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯವಾಗಿದೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಭಾಳ ಸಂತೋಷದ ವಿಚಾರ. ಅವರು ಅನೇಕ ವರ್ಷಗಳ ಕಾಲ ಪತ್ರಕರ್ತರಾಗಿ ಅನುಭವ ಪಡೆದಂತಹ ಒಂದು ವಿಚಾರ ಇಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಕ್ರಮಬದ್ಧ ನಿರೂಪಣೆಗೆ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯವಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ನಂಬಿಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ಕಾನ್ಸಿಯನ್ಸ್ ನೆಟ್ವರ್ಕ್ ಕೃತಿಯ ವಿಷಯವೇ ವಿಶಿಷ್ಟವಾದದ್ದು. ಬರೀ ಎಮರ್ಜೆನ್ಸಿ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಮತ್ತು ಭಾರತೀಯ ದೇಸಿ ಭಾಷೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಅನೇಕ ಕೃತಿಗಳು ಬಂದವೆ. ಆದರೆ ಇದರ ವೈಶಿಷ್ಟ್ಯ ಏನು ಅಂತಂದರೆ, ಇದು ಭಾರತದಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆದ ಹೋರಾಟದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇರುವುದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗಿ ಅಮೆರಿಕಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಎಮರ್ಜೆನ್ಸಿಗೆ ವಿರುದ್ಧವಾಗಿ ನಡೆದ ಹೋರಾಟದ ಕಥೆಯನ್ನು ಭಾಳ ಸಮಗ್ರವಾಗಿ ಸಂಗ್ರಹಿಸಿ ಪ್ರಕಟಿಸಿದೆ. ಈ 50 ವರ್ಷಗಳ ಬಳಿಕ ಎಮರ್ಜೆನ್ಸಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಮೇಲೆ ಹೇರಿ ಇಂದಿರಾ ಗಾಂಧಿಯವರು 50 ವರ್ಷ ಆಯಿತು. 50 ವರ್ಷಗಳ ಬಳಿಕ ಈ ಪುಸ್ತಕ ಅವರು ಬರೆದಿರೋದರಿಂದ ದೂರ ನಿಂತು ಆ ಎಮರ್ಜೆನ್ಸಿಯ ವಿಚಾರಗಳನ್ನು ನೋಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯವಾಗಿದೆ. ಅದರ ಜೊತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅಮೆರಿಕಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಚಳುವಳಿಯ ಪ್ರಮುಖ ಪ್ರವರ್ತಕರಾದಂತಹ ರವಿ ಚೋಪ್ರಾ ಅವರು, ಆನಂದ್ ಕುಮಾರ್ ಅವರು, SR ಹಿರೇಮಠ್ ಅವರು ಮತ್ತು ಅವರ 6-7 ಸಂಗಡಿಗರು ಅವರ ಮೂಲಕವೂ ವಿಷಯವನ್ನು ಸಂಗ್ರಹಿಸಿದರೆ ಅನೇಕ ಮೂಲ ಆಕರಗಳಿಗೆ ಹೋಗಿ ವಿಷಯಗಳನ್ನು ಸಂಗ್ರಹಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇದೊಂದು ವಿಶಿಷ್ಟವಾದಂಥ ಒಂದು ಚಳುವಳಿ. ಯಾಕೆ ಅಂತಂದರೆ, ವಿದೇಶಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಎಮರ್ಜೆನ್ಸಿಯ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಒಂದು ಅಭಿಪ್ರಾಯವನ್ನು ರೂಪಿಸೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯವಾಯಿತು ಈ ಚಳುವಳಿಯಿಂದ. ಮತ್ತು ಇನ್ನು ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಪೂರಕವಾಗಿ ನಡೆದಂತಹ ವಿದೇಶಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆದಂಥ ಅನೇಕ ಚಳುವಳಿಗಳಿಂದ ಎಮರ್ಜೆನ್ಸಿ ಲಿಫ್ಟ್ ಆಗೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಕಾರಣವಾದಂತಹ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾದಂಥ ಸಂಗತಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಇದು ಸಹ ಭಾಳ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾದಂಥ ಸಂಗತಿ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ನಂಬಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ಈ ಅಮೆರಿಕಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಚಳುವಳಿಯನ್ನು ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ಡೆಮಾಕ್ರಸಿ ಎನ್ನುವ ಸಂಘಟನೆ ಮೂಲಕ ನಡೆಸಿದಂತಹ ಈ ಚಳುವಳಿಯ ಪ್ರವರ್ತಕರೇನಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಇವರು ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ಸಿದ್ಧಾಂತಕ್ಕೆ, ಅಂದರೆ ರಾಜಕೀಯ ಸಿದ್ಧಾಂತಕ್ಕೆ, ಎಡ ಅಥವಾ ಬಲಪಂಥೀಯ ರಾಜಕೀಯ ಸಿದ್ಧಾಂತಕ್ಕೆ ಬದ್ಧವರಾದವರಲ್ಲ. ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಪ್ರಜಾಪ್ರಭುತ್ವಕ್ಕೆ ಮತ್ತು ಮಾನವ ಹಕ್ಕುಗಳಿಗೆ ಬದ್ಧರಾದವರು. ಭಾರತದಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಜಾಪ್ರಭುತ್ವ ಉಳಿಯಬೇಕು, ಸ್ಥಿರವಾಗಿರಬೇಕು ಮತ್ತು ಮಾನವ ಹಕ್ಕುಗಳಿಗೆ ಧಕ್ಕೆ ಬರಬಾರ್ದು. ಎಮರ್ಜೆನ್ಸಿ ಇದೆಲ್ಲಕ್ಕೂ ಧಕ್ಕೆ ತಂದಿದೆ ಅನ್ನುವ ಕಾರಣಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ಎಮರ್ಜೆನ್ಸಿ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಚಾರದ ಆಂದೋಲನವನ್ನು ಅಮೆರಿಕಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಇವರು ನಡೆಸಿದರು. ಎಮರ್ಜೆನ್ಸಿ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆದಂತಹ ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ಹಿಂಸಾತ್ಮಕ ಚಟುವಟಿಕೆಗಳು, JP ಮುಂತಾದ ನಾಯಕರನ್ನು ಮತ್ತು ಸಾವಿರಾರು ಕಾರ್ಯಕರ್ತರನ್ನು ಬಂಧಿಸಿ ವಿಚಾರಣೆ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಸೆರೆಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿಟ್ಟದ್ದು, ಪತ್ರಿಕೆಗಳಿಗೆ ಸೆನ್ಸಾರ್ಶಿಪ್ ಜಾರಿಗೊಳಿಸಿದ್ದು, ಸಂಜಯ್ ಗಾಂಧಿ ನೇತೃತ್ವದ ಹಿಂಸಾಚಾರ, ಇವುಗಳನ್ನು ಸಹ ಸುಗತ ಪ್ರಸ್ತಾಪಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಆದರೆ ವಿವರವಾಗಿ ಅವರು ಚರ್ಚಿಸೋದು ಅಮೆರಿಕಾದಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆದಂತಹ ಚಳುವಳಿಯನ್ನು, IFT ನಡೆಸಿದಂತಹ ಚಳುವಳಿಯನ್ನು ಕುರಿತು. ಈ IFTಯ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಬೇರೆ ಕೆಲವು ಸಂಘಟನೆಗಳು ಸೇರಿಕೊಳ್ತವೆ, ಅಂದರೆ ಬಲಪಂಥೀಯ ಎಡಪಂಥೀಯ ಸಂಘಟನೆಗಳು. ಆದರೆ ಅವರೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಸಹ ಗಾಂಧಿವಾದಕ್ಕೆ ಬದ್ಧರಾಗಿ JP ಅವರ ವಿಚಾರಗಳನ್ನು ಒಪ್ಪಿ ಚಳುವಳಿಯನ್ನು ಮುಂದುವರಿಸಿದರು. ಈ ಚಳುವಳಿಗೆ ಅಮೆರಿಕಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದಂತಹ ಪತ್ರಿಕೆಗಳು ಮತ್ತು ಮಾಧ್ಯಮಗಳು ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಬೆಂಬಲವನ್ನು ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋದನ್ನು ನೋಡಿದಂತಹ ಅಮೆರಿಕಾದ ಭಾರತೀಯ ರಾಯಭಾರಿಗಳ ಕಚೇರಿಯವರು ತಕ್ಷಣ ಎಚ್ಚೆತ್ತುಕೊಂಡು ಹೇಳಿಕೆಗಳನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಇವರ ಚಳುವಳಿಯನ್ನು ವಿರೋಧಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಮಾತ್ರ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಕೆಲವು ಚಳುವಳಿಯ ನಾಯಕರನ್ನು ಅವರ ಮೇಲೆ ಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ತಗೊಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಅನಂತಕುಮಾರ್ ಅವರು ಒಬ್ಬ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಯಾಗಿದ್ದರು. ಈ ಚಳುವಳಿಯ ಪ್ರವರ್ತಕರೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಯುವಕರು ಆ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ. ಈಗೆಲ್ಲ ವಯಸ್ಸಾಗಿದೆ, ಆದರೆ ಅವತ್ತು ಅವರೆಲ್ಲ 20ರಿಂದ 30 ಏಜ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ನಲ್ಲಿದ್ದಂತಹ ಯುವಕರು. ಅನಂತಕುಮಾರ್ ಅವರು ಸ್ಕಾಲರ್ಶಿಪ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಅಮೆರಿಕಕ್ಕೆ ಓದೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗಿರ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವರ ಸ್ಕಾಲರ್ಶಿಪ್ಪನ್ನು ವಿತ್ಡ್ರಾ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಚಳುವಳಿಯ ಬೇರೆ ನಾಯಕರ ವೀಸಾ ಪಾಸ್ಪೋರ್ಟ್ಗಳನ್ನು ಇಂಪೌಂಡ್ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೂ ಸಹ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ಪಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅದರ ಜೊತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗ ಭಾರತದ ರಾಯಭಾರಿಯಾಗಿದ್ದ TN ಕೌಲ್ ಅವರು ಒಂದು ಭಾಳ ವಿಚಿತ್ರವಾದ ಹೇಳಿಕೆಯನ್ನು ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಏನಂತಂದರೆ, ಭಾರತದ ವಿರುದ್ಧ, ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶದ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ವಿದೇಶಿ ನೆಲದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಪಪ್ರಚಾರ ಮಾಡೋದು ದೇಶಪ್ರೇಮ ಅಲ್ಲ, ದೇಶದ್ರೋಹ ಅನ್ನುವ ಮಾತನ್ನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಇದು ಭಾಳ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾದ ಮಾತು. ಮತ್ತು ಮುಂದೆ ನಾನು ಆ ಮಾತಿಗೆ ಬರ್ತೇನೆ. ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಚಳುವಳಿಗಳು ಅಮೆರಿಕಾದಲ್ಲಿ, ಯುರೋಪ್ನ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಭಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆದಂತಹ ಚಳುವಳಿಗಳಿಂದ ಮತ್ತು ಮಾಧ್ಯಮಗಳು ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಪ್ರಚಾರದಿಂದಾಗಿ ಇಂದಿರಾ ಗಾಂಧಿಯವರಿಗೂ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಹಿಂಜರಿಕೆಯಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಎಮರ್ಜೆನ್ಸಿಯನ್ನು ಲಿಫ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವರು ಸುಮಾರು 19 ತಿಂಗಳು ಎಮರ್ಜೆನ್ಸಿ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಅದು ಆಮೇಲಿಂದ ಅವರು ಎಮರ್ಜೆನ್ಸಿಯನ್ನು ಲಿಫ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಹೇಳೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಬಯಸೋ ಸಂಗತಿ ಏನು ಅಂತಂದರೆ, TN ಕೌಲ್ ಅವರು ಹೇಳಿದಂತಹ ಮಾತು, ವಿದೇಶಿ ನೆಲದಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಪ್ರಚಾರ ಮಾಡೋದಿದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ದೇಶದ್ರೋಹ ಅಂತೇಳಿ. ಯಾಕೆ ಈ ಮಾತನ್ನು ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದೀನಿ? ಇವತ್ತು ಮತ್ತೆ ಅದೇ ಮಾತನ್ನು ಇವತ್ತು ಯಾರು ಆಡಳಿತ ನಡೆಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅವರು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸುಗತ ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸರಾಜ್ ಅವರು ಸಹ ಅವರ ಪುಸ್ತಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಘೋಷಿತ ತುರ್ತು ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಮತ್ತು ಅಘೋಷಿತ ತುರ್ತು ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಪ್ರಸ್ತಾಪಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವತ್ತು ಘೋಷಿತ ತುರ್ತು ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ಸಂವಿಧಾನೇತರ ಶಕ್ತಿಗಳು ಆಡಳಿತವನ್ನು ಕೈಗೆ ತೆಗೆದುಕೊಂಡು ದಮನಕಾರಿ ಕೆಲಸಗಳನ್ನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾಯಿದ್ರು. ಸಂಜಯ್ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಮುಂದಂಥವರು ಅನ್ನೋ ಮಾತನ್ನು ನಾವು ಕೇಳಿದ್ದೀವಿ, ನೋಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ನಮ್ಮಂಥವರೆಲ್ಲ ಆ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ವಯಸ್ಸಾಗಿದ್ದವರು ಅದನ್ನು ಪ್ರತ್ಯಕ್ಷವಾಗಿ ನೋಡಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಇವತ್ತೇನಾಗ್ತಾಯಿದೆ? ಇವತ್ತೂ ಸಹ ಸಂವಿಧಾನೇತರ ಶಕ್ತಿಗಳು, ಇವ್ರು ಯಾರು? ಈ ಮಠಾಧೀಶರು, ಸನ್ಯಾಸಿಗಳು, ಕೆಲವು ಸಂಘಟನೆಗಳು, ಇವೆಲ್ಲ ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ಪರವಾಗಿ ಸರ್ಕಾರವೇ ಇವರು ಅನ್ನೋ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಜನಗಳನ್ನು ಹೆದರಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಅನೇಕ ಕೊಲೆಗಳು ಗೋರಕ್ಷಣೆಯ ನೆಪದಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾವೆ. ಅದರಿಂದ ಸಂವಿಧಾನೇತರ ಶಕ್ತಿಗಳು ಬಹಳ ಅನ್ಯಾಯವನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಎಮರ್ಜೆನ್ಸಿ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ. ಅಂದರೆ ಅಷ್ಟು ಪ್ರಮಾಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಲ್ಲದೇ ಇದ್ರೂ ಈಗಲೂ ಸಹ ಆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮುಂದುವರೆದಿದೆ. ಸಂಜಯ್ ಗಾಂಧಿಯವರು ಬುಲ್ಡೋಜರ್ ಹಚ್ಚಿ ದೆಹಲಿಯ ಅನೇಕ ಕೊಳೆಗೇರಿಗಳನ್ನು ನಿರ್ನಾಮ ಮಾಡಿದರು ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಆವಾಗ ಪತ್ರಿಕೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಓದ್ತೀವಿ. ಈಗಲೂ ಸಹ ಬುಲ್ಡೋಜರ್ ನ್ಯಾಯ ಉತ್ತರ ಪ್ರದೇಶ ಮುಂತಾದ ರಾಜ್ಯಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ. ತಮಗೆ ಆಗದೇ ಇರುವಂತಹ ರಾಜಕೀಯ ಕಾರ್ಯಕರ್ತರು, ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ಅಲ್ಪಸಂಖ್ಯಾತರು, ಅವರ ಮನೆಗಳನ್ನು ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ಸುಳ್ಳು ನೆಪವನ್ನು ಒಡ್ಡಿ ಬುಲ್ಡೋಜರ್ ಹಚ್ಚಿ ನಾಶ ಮಾಡುವಂತಹ ಕೆಲಸ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ. ಅವತ್ತು ಸಾವಿರಾರು ಮಂದಿ ಮಾನವ ಹಕ್ಕುಗಳ ಹೋರಾಟಗಾರರನ್ನು, ಪತ್ರಕರ್ತರನ್ನು ಸೆರೆಮನೆಗೆ ತಳ್ಳಿ ವಿಚಾರಣೆ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಅನೇಕ ತಿಂಗಳುಗಳು 19 ತಿಂಗಳುಗಳು ಅವರು ಸೆರೆಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿದ್ದರು. ಇವತ್ತಲೂ ಸಹ ಮಾನವ ಹಕ್ಕುಗಳ ಹೋರಾಟಗಾರರು, ಪತ್ರಕರ್ತರು, ವೈಚಾರಿಕ ಇಂಟೆಲೆಕ್ಚುಯಲ್ಸು ಜೈಲಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಕೋರ್ಟ್ಗಳು ಸಹ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಒಂದು ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸರ್ಕಾರಕ್ಕೆ ಸಹಾಯವನ್ನು ಇದರ ವಿಚಾರದಲ್ಲಿ ನೀಡ್ತಾ ಇವೆ. ಅದರ ಜೊತೆ ಅವತ್ತು ಅಧಿಕೃತವಾಗಿ ಕೆಲವು ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗಳನ್ನು, ಸಂವಿಧಾನಕ್ಕೆ ಬದ್ಧವಾಗಿರಬೇಕಾದಂಥ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗಳನ್ನು, ಎಮರ್ಜೆನ್ಸಿ ಪವರ್ಸನ್ನು ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸಿ ಇಂದಿರಾ ಗಾಂಧಿಯವರು ಮೂಲೆಗೆ ತಳ್ಳಿದ್ರು. ಇವತ್ತು CBI, ED, ಚುನಾವಣಾ ಕಮಿಷನ್ ಮುಂತಾದ ಸಂವಿಧಾನಕ್ಕೆ ಮಾತ್ರ ಬದ್ಧವಾಗಿರಬೇಕಾದಂಥ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗಳು ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ಕೈಗೊಂಬೆಗಳಾಗಿವೆ ಅಂತ ಬಹಳ ಜನ ಆರೋಪಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅದರ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ನಿಜ ಸಹ ಹೌದು. ಅವತ್ತು ಸರ್ಕಾರವನ್ನು ಟೀಕಿಸಿದವ್ರನ್ನ ದೇಶದ್ರೋಹಿಗಳು ಅಂತಿದ್ರು. ನಾನು ಈಗಾಗಲೇ ಹೇಳಿರುವಂತೆ ಇವತ್ತಲೂ ಸಹ ಅದೇ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ. ಯಾರ್ಯಾರು ಸರ್ಕಾರವನ್ನು ಟೀಕಿಸ್ತಾರೋ ಅವರೆಲ್ಲ ಅರ್ಬನ್ ನಕ್ಸಲೈಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಹಣೆಪಟ್ಟಿ ಅಂಟಿಸುತ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವತ್ತು ಇಂದಿರಾ ಈಸ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ, ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಈಸ್ ಇಂದಿರಾ ಅಂತ ಒಬ್ಬ ಮಹಾಶಯ ಘೋಷಿಸಿದ. ಇವತ್ತು ಈ ದೇಶದ ನಾಯಕ ಮನುಷ್ಯನೇ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಅವನೊಬ್ಬ ಅವತಾರ ಪುರುಷ ಅಂತ ಘೋಷಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಸ್ವತಃ ಮೋದಿಯವರೇ ನಾನು ಸಾಮಾನ್ಯ ಮನುಷ್ಯರ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹುಟ್ಟಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅದರಿಂದ ಅಂತಹ ವ್ಯತ್ಯಾಸ ಇಲ್ಲದಂತಹ ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಯಾಕೆ ಏರ್ಪಟ್ಟಿದೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಭಾಳ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ನಾವು ದೇಶದ ಅನೇಕ ಬಹುಶಃ ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶ ಮೂಲತಃ ಒಂದು ಫ್ಯೂಡಲ್ ದೇಶ ಇದು. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಜಾಪ್ರಭುತ್ವ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ನೋದು ನಿಜವಾದ ಅರ್ಥದಲ್ಲಿ ಸಕ್ಸಸ್ಫುಲ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನೋದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಬಹಳ ಅನುಮಾನ ಈ ಎರಡೂ ಸಂದರ್ಭಗಳನ್ನು ನೋಡಿದರೆ ನಮಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ದೇಶ ಮಾತ್ರ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಇಡೀ ಜಗತ್ತಿನಲ್ಲೇ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಹೇಗಿದೆ ಅಂತಂದರೆ ಸರ್ವಾಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳೇ ಚುನಾವಣೆಗಳ ಮೂಲಕ ಇಡೀ ಜಗತ್ತಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಬಹುಪಾಲು ದೇಶಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಆಯ್ಕೆಯಾಗಿ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇತ್ತೀಚೆಗೆ ತಾನೇ ಇರಾನ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಅಮೆರಿಕ ಮತ್ತು ಇಸ್ರೇಲ್ ನಡೆಸಿದ ದಾಳಿ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಅದನ್ನು ಯಾರು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ನ್ಯಾಯದ ಪರವಾಗಿರೋರು ಸಹ ಅದನ್ನು ಒಪ್ಪೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅಮೆರಿಕ ಅಣ್ವಸ್ತ್ರಗಳನ್ನು ಇಟ್ಕೋಬೋದು, ಇಸ್ರೇಲ್ ಅಣ್ವಸ್ತ್ರಗಳನ್ನು ಇಟ್ಕೋಬೋದು, ಯುರೋಪ್ ದೇಶಗಳು ಅಣ್ವಸ್ತ್ರಗಳನ್ನು ಇಟ್ಕೋಬೋದು, ಭಾರತ, ಪಾಕಿಸ್ತಾನ, ರಷ್ಯಾ ಅವರೆಲ್ಲ ಇಟ್ಕೋಬೋದು. ಇರಾನ್ ಮಾತ್ರ ಇಟ್ಕೋಬಾರ್ದು. ಇರಾನ್ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಭಾಳ ಅಪಾಯ, ಇವ್ರು ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಯಾವ ಅಪಾಯವೂ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಆದರೆ ಟ್ರಂಪ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾನೆ, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಬಾಲ ಬಿಚ್ಚಿದರೆ ಆ ಖೊಮೇನಿಯನ್ನು ನಾವು ಬಾಂಬ್ ಹಾಕಿ ಸಾಯಿಸ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತೇಳಿ. ಅಮೇರಿಕಾ ಇವತ್ತು ನಿಜವಾದ ಭಯೋತ್ಪಾದಕ ದೇಶ. ಅದನ್ನು ಯಾರೂ ಧೈರ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಹೇಳೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಶಕ್ತಿ ಯಾರಿಗೂ ಸಹ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಪ್ಯಾಲೆಸ್ಟೈನ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಇಸ್ರೇಲ್ ಇತ್ತೀಚಿನ ಎಷ್ಟು ಕರಾಳವಾಗಿ ದಾಳಿ ನಡೆಸಿದೆ ಅಂದರೆ 50-60 ಸಾವಿರ ಜನ, ಬಹುಪಾಲು ಹೆಣ್ಣುಮಕ್ಕಳು, ಚಿಕ್ಕ ಮಕ್ಕಳುಗಳು ಸತ್ತೋಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇಡೀ ಜಗತ್ತಿನ ಸಾಕ್ಷಿ ಪ್ರಜ್ಞೆ ಸಂಪೂರ್ಣವಾಗಿ ಮೌನವಾಗಿ ಇದೆ. ಉಕ್ರೇನ್ ಮೇಲೆ ರಷ್ಯಾ ದಾಳಿ ನಡೆಸಿದೆ, ಅದರ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಯಾವ ಅಂತಹ ಪ್ರತಿರೋಧ ಕಾಣಿಸೋಲ್ಲ. ನ್ಯಾಷನಲಿಸ್ಟ್ ಚೈನಾವನ್ನು ಯಾವಾಗ ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೂ ದಾಳಿ ಮಾಡಿ ವಶಪಡಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಸ್ಟ್ ಚೈನಾ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಅದು ತಪ್ಪಲ್ಲ. ಯಾಕೆ ಅಂತಂದರೆ ಅದು ಪ್ರಬಲವಾದ ದೇಶ. ಚೈನಾದ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಮಾತಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಜಗತ್ತಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಬಹಳ ಹೆದರ್ತಾರೆ ಜನ. ಟಿಬೆಟ್ಟನ್ನು ಸುಲಭವಾಗಿ ನುಂಗಿ ಅರಗಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡಾಯಿತು ಚೈನಾ. ಬರ್ಮಾದಲ್ಲಿ ರೋಹಿಂಗ್ಯಾ ಮುಸ್ಲಿಮರ ಮೇಲೆ ಎಂತಹ ದಮನ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ನಮಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿದೆ. ಬಾಂಗ್ಲಾದಲ್ಲಿ, ಪಾಕಿಸ್ತಾನದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಲ್ಪಸಂಖ್ಯಾತ ಹಿಂದೂಗಳ ಮೇಲೆ ನಡೀತಾ ಇರುವ ದಮನಕಾರಿ ಕೆಲಸಕ್ಕೂ ನಮ್ಮ ಎಮರ್ಜೆನ್ಸಿ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆದಂಥ ದಮನಕಾರಿ ಕೆಲಸಕ್ಕೂ ಯಾವುದೇ ವ್ಯತ್ಯಾಸ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ನನಗೆ ಅನಿಸೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ದೇಶದಲ್ಲೇ ಅಲ್ಪಸಂಖ್ಯಾತರ ಮೇಲೆ, ವಿಶೇಷವಾಗಿ ಮುಸ್ಲಿಮರ ಮೇಲೆ ಅವರನ್ನೇ ಉದ್ದೇಶಿಸಿ ಕೆಲವು ಕಾನೂನುಗಳನ್ನು ತರೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಅವರ ಮೇಲೆ ಅನೇಕ ನೆಪಗಳನ್ನು ಒಡ್ಡಿ ಅವರನ್ನು ಹಲ್ಲೆ ಮಾಡಿ ಕೊಲ್ಲೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯವಾಗಿದೆ. ಆದ್ದರಿಂದ ಇವತ್ತು ಇಡೀ ಜಗತ್ತಿನಲ್ಲಿರುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ತುರ್ತು ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿಯ ಒಂದು ಸಂದರ್ಭ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಅದರ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಹೋರಾಟ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಯಾವುದೇ ಅತಿರೇಕದ ಸಿದ್ಧಾಂತಕ್ಕೂ ಬದ್ಧರಾಗದೇ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಮಾನವ ಹೋರಾಟಗಾರರ ತಂಡ, ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ಡೆಮಾಕ್ರಸಿ ಅಮೆರಿಕಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ, ಅಂತಹ ಒಂದು ತಂಡ ಜಾಗತಿಕ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿದ್ಧವಾಗಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಸಿದ್ಧವಾಗದೇ ಇದ್ದರೆ ಜಗತ್ತಿಗೆ ಉಳಿಗಾಲ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ದೃಢವಾಗಿ ನಂಬಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಮಾತು, ದೇಶ ಪ್ರೇಮ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಇದು ಬಹಳ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಮೌಲ್ಯ ಅಂಥೇಳಿ ಯಾರೂ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಬೇಕಾಗಿಲ್ಲ. ದೇಶ ಪ್ರೇಮವನ್ನು ಒಂದು ನೆಪವನ್ನಾಗಿ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು ದುರ್ಬಲರನ್ನು, ಅಲ್ಪಸಂಖ್ಯಾತರನ್ನು ಶೋಷಣೆ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ, ಅವರನ್ನು ನಾಶ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ದೇಶಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ. ರವೀಂದ್ರನಾಥ್ ಠಾಕೂರ್, ಟಾಲ್ಸ್ಟಾಯ್ ಅವರು ದೇಶ ಪ್ರೇಮದ ಅತಿರೇಕ ಸೃಷ್ಟಿಸಬಹುದಾದಂಥ ಅವಾಂತರಗಳನ್ನು ಅನೇಕ ವರ್ಷಗಳ ಹಿಂದೆ ಎಚ್ಚರಿಸಿದರು. ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿಯೇ ಮಹಾಕವಿ ಕುವೆಂಪು ಅವರು ಇದೇ ಮಾತನ್ನು ಹೇಳಿದರು. ವಿಶ್ವಮಾನವತಾವಾದ ಅವರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ದೇಶ ಪ್ರೇಮಕ್ಕೆ ವಿರುದ್ಧವಾದ್ದೇ. ಅದರಿಂದ ದೇಶ ಪ್ರೇಮ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ಒಂದು ಅಮಲು ಭರಿಸುವ ಸಂಗತಿಯನ್ನಾಗಿ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಳ್ಳದೆ ಅದೊಂದು ವಾಸ್ತವ ಅನ್ನುವ ವಿಚಾರವನ್ನು ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೇಕಾದಂತಹ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಬದುಕ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಅದರಿಂದ ಮಾನವ ಹಕ್ಕುಗಳ ಹೋರಾಟದ ಪರವಾಗಿ ಮತ್ತು ಅಮೆರಿಕಾದಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆದಂಥ ಒಂದು ಚಿಕ್ಕ ಪ್ರಮಾಣದ ಹೋರಾಟ ಆದರೂ ಅದು ಇವತ್ತು ಜಾಗತಿಕವಾದಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಹೋರಾಟಕ್ಕೆ ಮಾದರಿಯಾಗ್ಬೋದು ಅನ್ನುವುದನ್ನು ಇವತ್ತು ಒತ್ತಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ, ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾತುಗಳನ್ನು ನಾನು ಆಡುವುದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯವಾದಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಪುಸ್ತಕವನ್ನು ರಚಿಸಿದ ಗೆಳೆಯ ಸುಗತ ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸರಾಜು ಅವರಿಗೆ ಮತ್ತು ಸಭೆಯಲ್ಲಿರುವಂತಹ SR ಹಿರೇಮಠ ಅವರು, ಶ್ರೀಮಾನ್ ಆನಂದ್ ಕುಮಾರ್ ಅವರು, ಚೋಪ್ರಾ ಅವರು, ಇವರಿಗೆ ವಂದಿಸಿ ನನ್ನ ಮಾತುಗಳನ್ನು ಮುಗಿಸ್ತೇನೆ. ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
Thank you, Professor Maruda Siddappa, for your address. May I now request Mr. Chiranjeev Singh to speak?
ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೆ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. Like Sugata's previous books, this book is also beautifully written. Some sentences glitter like stars. Justice Hegde ji very rightly said that the emergency was declared to save the chair of one person. Very true. The day the emergency was declared, the previous day, I was with Mr. Devrajars getting some files cleared. And before that, of course, the Allahabad High Court judgment had come, and we were all wondering what would happen. And I was very young then, so as a youngster, you can say things which probably the elderly people won't be able to say. I said she should resign. And of course, CM's office was being managed by Mr. Lin and me. We two were there. And CM said, but the charges are not serious. Anyway, we discussed the pros and cons of her resignation. And then the day previous to the declaration of the emergency, as I said, I was with the CM getting some files cleared. Suddenly the door opened. This was at CM's residence, his office in the residence, and Yashpal Kapoor entered. His visit was unexpected because it had not been informed earlier that he would be coming to see the CM. So he looked at me, and the CM kind of motioned. So I came out. The door was shut. And after some time, Yashpal Kapoor left hurriedly. And I went inside and he said, call Mr. Lin also. So Mr. Lin was called and CM said she's going to impose emergency. Now, Siddharth Shankar Rai was the chief minister of West Bengal, and he is one of, I think, the architects of the emergency, one of the main advisors who advised her to impose the emergency. I don't know if other chief ministers were also consulted, but Devrajar certainly was a very important chief minister. So she sent Yashpal Kapoor. Whether Yashpal Kapoor was trying to convince the CM to sort of justify the emergency, or he told him to arrest people, we don't know, because CM never mentioned. But the fact is that Mr. Devraj was told a day earlier that emergency was going to be imposed. And it was imposed, as Justice Hegdeji said, to save the chair of Mrs. Gandhi. There was no other reason. Now, this book, as I said, is beautifully written. And I would say that I'm happy that the heroes of this book are here today with us. This is an inspiring tale of idealism that needed to be told. And Sugata has told it very well. But I would say that their efforts in America were heroic. And this is one dimension of the resistance to emergency, which probably was not very well known in India, but now, of course, with this book, their role would be brought to light. And Sugata has summed up the theme very beautifully in the title, The Conscience Network. Though I think Mrs. Gandhi wouldn't have been bothered about what was being said about her in the press, though contrary to the view expressed in the book, that she was sensitive to what people were saying about her. Now, much before the emergency was imposed, this is in 1974 or 73, I think, 73 sometimes, when Devraj Arsa was under attack by the press. And I said, we can have a press conference, a press meet, so that you can sort of talk to the press people. He said, let them bark. Now, when the normal reaction to the media and the press of a very fine chief minister is let them bark, you can imagine what the attitude of the prime minister would be, and attitude of the prime minister who imposed the emergency would be. Now, 140,000 people were imprisoned during the emergency. In those 19 months, 140,000 people were imprisoned. Out of that, 43,000 were from the Akali party. That was the only party which sent the jathas of volunteers for imprisonment from the day one till the last day when the emergency was lifted. All other parties had compromised. They were the only ones who did not compromise. And you can see 140,000 now, for example, in Karnataka, the orders to arrest the political prisoners came from Delhi, not from here. Those who were imprisoned in Karnataka were generally those who opposed Devraj Arsu's land reforms. Though land reforms, ultimately it was a cosmetic kind of thing, except in South Canara, where some land was given to the tillers, etc. But otherwise, land reforms nowhere in India has really succeeded. What has happened is that because of our laws of inheritance, over the years, the holdings have been automatically subdivided. Barring maybe perhaps some parts of Bihar, etc., there are hardly any large zamindars in India. certainly not in Karnataka. Karnataka did not have large zimidars. So it was more or less kind of a public relations thing, 20-point program, etc., etc. The point is, what did the emergency achieve? Sugata has quoted JP in this book, and I'll read that. JP said, "Rulers are like man-eaters. Once they have tasted the blood of unrestrained power, they become its addicts." This is very well said, and I have seen it repeatedly during my service and outside the service also. Once they taste the blood of unrestrained power, they become its addicts. It's not just the unrestrained power, it is the blood of power. Power itself is like tasting the blood. And I'm reminded of the great book, Lord of Rings. It says, one ring to rule all, but once you have that ring of power, you don't want to give it up. So this was simply the case of Mrs. Gandhi not willing to give the power of ring, which was ruling all the powers. And all the troubles which our heroes underwent during the emergency, it's fine. I mean, as I said, they are actually the beacon lights of conscience. But to my mind, the work they have done after their return from America is far more valuable than what they did during the emergency in America. I have been seeing Hiremat Saab since the time he set up his SPS, his NGO. And for most of the NGOs, I was the go-to person in the government. So emergency, it happened. There was resistance to it. People compromised. People showed their true colors in many cases. I have seen how people's characters were exposed, how there was deterioration in the inner beings because there was unrestrained power. Sugata, but there were then, of course, many interesting memories linked with emergency because, as Sugata said, I was the chief censor of the state. I was both with the CM and I was also the director of information and publicity. I had two charges. And I was made the director of information and publicity because the director of information publicity of the state, every state had to be the chief censor of the state. Now, one night around 9 o'clock in the night, I got a call from the Home Secretary, Mr. Hanuman, a great Home Secretary. He said that there is a message from Delhi, and Mr. Dipena was the chief censor in Delhi, that you are not to release the proofs of the Indian Express till 2 p.m. I said, sir, this is illegal. He said, then you talk to the CM. So around 9:30, I called Mr. Urs and I said, sir, this is the message, but this is illegal. He simply said, if it is illegal, don't do it. And whatever you can say atrocities happened here was because of the overzealous deputy commissioners in the districts because they got power drunk. So, as I said, there are many things that happened, but we have to see what happened after the emergency. In fact, in Punjab now, a lot of discussion is going on and a lot of soul searching because for 19 months, every day, Jathas went from Akal Takht and they volunteered. the orders for their imprisonment did not come from above. It is the people who volunteered to be imprisoned. And they say that, what did we get out of it? Mrs. Gandhi probably got so fed up with these obstreperous Sikhs that she wanted to teach them a lesson. And one thing led to another thing and to another thing: Operation Blue Star, Mrs. Gandhi's assassination, genocide of Sikhs, and all those things. I would say that is the aftermath of emergency also, about which only people in Punjab are talking, but nowhere else it's being talked. And as I said, I think that she wasn't bothered about what people were writing about emergency or tea and call lecturing in America. It just didn't matter to the politicians in power. I think it was the wrong or misleading intelligence reports which probably said that she would win thunderingly if she held the elections now. I'm currently reading a book on Bastar and Praveer Chandra Bhanjdev, which is going to be released on the 22nd this month. And there I came across this line today in this book. This is about the murder of Praveer Chandra Bhanjdev, the ex-ruler of Bastar. This is about the intelligence system. They tended to report to the government just what their superiors wanted to hear. And I can give you a personal example. In 1997, I was a special assistant to Mr. Barnala at the center, which was then the biggest ministry in Government of India, out of which some 9 or 10 ministries have been carved out now. And a very dear friend of mine from college days, he was an inspector in IB. So while talking to me, he mentioned that Kapuri Morcha had started about canal, this thing, and he told me what happened. I said, Darshan, there's something very serious. Please alert the government. It's going to have far-reaching results. So he made that report and he took it to his superior, the SP, Superintendent of Police, whatever is the equivalent in IB. He said, but how can we send this report? He said, sir, a very responsible IAS officer has said that you send this report. He said, no, we can't send this report. They sent the report which they thought would be palatable to the people above. And the Kapuri Morcha was the spark which ultimately lit the fire of Operation Blue Star. So I think this is what happened. But nevertheless, as people of conscience, one salutes them. I'm glad that they are here for the release of the book. I'm glad that Sugata gave me the opportunity to say a few words, because it's a very beautifully written book. Sugata's sensibility is literary. Having grown up as the son of Professor Srinivasaraju, he has grown up with literature at home, and he lives and breathes literature, so the book has a very high literary quality. As I said in the beginning, some sentences glitter like stars. So I congratulate him on this book. Now, about the aftermath of the emergency, Sugata concludes the book with a quotation from Salman Rushdie. I shall just read that and finish my speech. Rushdie wrote, that is Mrs. Gandhi, her major aim in the following years after 1979 was to achieve a personal rehabilitation, to obliterate the memory of the emergency and its atrocities, to be cleansed of its taint, absolved of history. With the help of numerous prime ministers and presidents, leaders of the West, that aim was all but achieved by the time of her death. She told the world that the horror stories about the emergency were all fictions, and the world allowed her to get away with this lie. It was a triumph of image over substance. It is difficult to resist the conclusion that the West, in particular Western capital, saw that a rehabilitated Mrs. Gandhi would be of great use and set about inventing her. As Rushdie had said, she told the world that the horror stories about the emergency were all fictions. This book is the proof that they were not a fiction, that they were people with conscience who resisted the emergency, like all the 43,000 Akalis who every day came to Akal Takht and voluntarily gave themselves up for imprisonment. Thank you, Sugata, for telling this tale which needed to be told.
Thank you for your words, Sri Chiranjeev Singh. May I now request G. Mahantesh and Mallikarjun B. of Paradarshak Media Foundation to felicitate our chief guests for today. The author wants to give a very special gift to the guests. I will let him explain it.
Just like to give two archival posters, three in fact, that I found in America printed 50 years ago. Two of them are of the IIT, when they did their first protest in America, and the second one is the walk that they did from Philadelphia to New York. So those posters, and there's one New York Times front page of Indira Gandhi, a devastating cartoon. So I thought I should just reprint them and give them as mementos to our guests.
May I now please request the organizers to accompany the chief guest to the front rows of the auditorium, please, following which we will move on to the second part of the program.
Can I request Mr. S.R. Hiremat, Mr. Ravi Chopra, and Professor Anand Kumar to come over on the stage, please?
Now we move on to the second part of the program, a discussion between the book's three principal protagonists and author. Dr. Ravi Chopra has come all the way from Dehradun, Professor Anand Kumar has come from Goa, and Mr. Hiremat from Dharwad. But all three of them were in Delhi last week with the author at the Delhi launch of the book at the India International Center. It gives me great joy to introduce the three conscience keepers of the nation to you all. Again, they are well known, but let us quickly be done with the formality. Dr. Ravi Chopra did his B.Tech in Metallurgical Engineering and Material Science from IIT Bombay in 1968. Later, he did his doctoral research in Metallurgical and Materials Engineering at Stevens Institute of Technology, New Jersey. Dr. Chopra was the founder-director of People Sciences Institute in Dehradun. Dr. Chopra received national attention when he helped produce the first citizens' report on state of India's environment in 1982. This report was critically acclaimed as a unique effort anywhere in the world. Dr. Chopra has been on many national advisory committees with various ministries of the Government of India and the Planning Authority chaired by the Prime Minister of India. He was also chairman of the Supreme Court's expert panel on the Char Dham project. Professor Anand Kumar taught sociology at Jawaharlal Nehru University and was among the first founders of the Aam Aadmi Party. He received an MA in sociology at the Banaras Hindu University in Varanasi, an MPhil in sociology at the Jawaharlal Nehru University, and a PhD in sociology at the University of Chicago. He taught at the Banaras Hindu University before he joined JNU in 1990. He has also been India Chair in Germany at the Albert Ludwig University, Freiburg, GSP Scholar at Humboldt University, again in Germany, a Fulbright Scholar at Tufts University, International Faculty at Innsbruck University in Austria, and GSP faculty at Flasco in Buenos Aires, Argentina, among others. He has been part of many grassroots democracy and social movements in India and a much adored public intellectual. Our own S.R. Hiremat is an environmental and anti-corruption activist. He is the founder-president of the Samaja Parivartana Samudaya, an NGO for the promotion of people-oriented policies and legislation, protection of the rights of the tribals and rural poor over natural resources, and the empowerment of panchayat institutions. He also founded the National Committee for Protection of Natural Resources. He is best known for his relentless fight against the illegal mining mafia that took place in Karnataka and successfully challenging many political heavyweights and government executives associated with illegal mining. His organization is a recipient of the highest environmental honor in India, the Indira Gandhi Paryavaran Puraskar. Before he returned to India, after the emergency ended, he was a top corporate professional in the USA. While in the USA, he started the India Development Service in Chicago and was the chairman of the India League of America. All three, Dr. Chopra, Professor Kumar, and Mr. Hiremat, were founders of Indians for Democracy during the emergency, which is at the heart of the book that has just been launched. I now request the author to steer the conversation forward with them. Before they start the conversation, may I request the author to felicitate his book's characters. I am sure it is a very rare privilege for an author.
I said I will do the honoring of the characters, the protagonists of my book, because in Delhi they surprised me by felicitating me. So I think I have to sort of return the favor, or, pull a fast one on them, as they would say. I have also something else for them which I'm sure they have not seen. This is something that I found in the private collection of an American lady called Paula Bronstein, who is actually another character in the book. The chapter is called The Curious Case of Paula Bronstein. She had married an Odia person. And while all these three fought the battle so hard, they preserved nothing. So I had to go looking for papers all over America, and this lady, who was not actually one of those at the middle of the whole thing, but had joined them much later, in 76, had preserved every single paper that, they had released. So she had just thrown it in her attic. She had also divorced her husband, and so she had no reason to keep it, but surprisingly she had kept it, and she was initially reluctant to talk to me, but then after a lot of persuasion, she let me in, and once she let me in, she was marvelous. And I just had a telephone conversation with her yesterday, and she has said that she would like to meet her three friends and all other friends of the IFT very soon. She's also nearing 80, and she lives in Swarthmore, in a very historical house of a Quaker called Horace Alexander, who again was one of the pillars of support for the IFD. And Horace Alexander, you will be interested to know, was someone who taught Indira Gandhi to watch birds. And he was a friend of Motilal Nehru. He was someone who dealt with the publishers for Nehru, correcting his proofs, negotiating his royalty, and was someone that Gandhi, after the death of C.F. Andrews, Charlie Andrews, Dinabandhu Andrews, Gandhi said, Horace Alexander will replace C.F. Andrews. That was the position of the man. So why I am trying to tell you this is that not all friends of Nehru family were supporting her during the emergency. Those people who had a conscience also opposed it, and they did it in a very responsible and responsible manner and without hate or malice. They did it to restore democracy in India, which they knew was ultimately very, very essential to do anything with development or growth or anything or human rights. So I will now request Professor Anand Kumar. I'll give them what I have with me at the end. It's actually a front page of the New York Times, which about which I write in the book. I forget which page. It's the decapitated head of Indira Gandhi after she lost the elections. It's shocking illustration in the front page. I'll show it to you, of the New York Times magazine. And the copy was written by William Borders, a journalist who was in India at that point of time. So it's a very, very interesting front page of the New York Times, which I thought they should have a copy of, which Paula Bronstein had preserved. Anyway, I now hand over the mic to Professor Anand Kumar, and I would also request him to comment, ask a question, or say something, and we'll end it. We'll do just one round, and we'll end all of this in 15 minutes. Please bear with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sugata ji. It's a very inspiring evening for us, because his book was welcomed by 4 icons of India, Bangalore, of course our generation, and they are still here. It's also very encouraging for many, many people like us that someone of the stature of Sugata Raju decided to make a narrative, which was near impossible task. As he said, that even we were not very aware of the significance of the work in which we were involved during the emergency. So we had not kept photographs, posters, letters, documents, but still he decided to find it out, and he found it. The book is written in a very special style, more like a novel, more like a poetry, and less like a political narrative. And that suits the temperament of all of us. We were not into any kind of headhunting project. We were not for demolishing anybody, celebrating anybody. We were for rediscovering our society, ourselves, our times, and we are so happy that Indian people stood the test of time. Indians in America also helped us and proved that they were second to none in their commitment to democracy. And it's very suitable that the book is dedicated by a father to a son. Because democracy is an ongoing project. It came to us through our founding fathers, national heroes. It was nursed and evolved in the 60s and the 70s. Then it faced a major crisis. And today we stand tall and proud that yes, we can make a mistake, but as soon as the mistake is recognized, we can correct it also. So this all is not possible in one book, but it has been made possible by Sugata ji. I really don't have any question to ask. I had a few questions to ask in Delhi meeting. There will be many book reviewers, they'll be asking many questions. The only thing I have to offer is my congratulations and appreciation. And I'm so happy that all of you thought it fit to spend an evening with Sugata Raju and his book. Thank you very much.
Today's program, I found it very heart-touching, as this book recalls our experiences in the US, 10,000 miles away. Justice Santosh Hegde, the way he described what was happening here was really a matter of very touching and deep concern. And I also liked very much Professor Murali Siddhappa's comments that people like us, who were ordinary citizens of this country, I had promised my mother that I would come back and do something in this country that would give some purpose and meaning to my life. That was my motivation. And when such a thing like democracy and the Constitution, which long, illustrious freedom struggle of our country, which was not only inspirational for us, but for a person like Nelson Mandela in South Africa or Dr. Martin Luther King in America, and the legacy that they left with that Constitution, they were all under assault. So we felt that if we want to come and do some meaningful work here in this country, democratic framework is very essential. That was a gut feeling. We never knew that whether we will ever succeed or not succeed, but it was an experience worth living. And 50 years later, as the author Sugata said very correctly, we did not preserve anything. We did not think it was such a worthwhile thing that a book needs to be written about it. But Professor Murali Siddhappa today has really focused that when democracies around the world are in danger today, human rights are under danger. So people like us, common people, needs to hear the voice of our conscience and do something about it. And that time I was a corporate executive. I asked Horace Alexander. It was very interesting. He said he was going to meet with Mr. Kaul and there is a correspondence between Indira Gandhi and him and all. So I told him that I want to ask you a question. He says, please. He said, what if Mrs. Gandhi will not lift the emergency for a long time? Will you come to our side? And with the elections being postponed in December of 1975, true to his words, he not only supported us, that long and most, I would say, cherished human rights walk from Philadelphia to New York, he was there and he fully backed us. And similarly, Noam Chomsky and all other kinds of people. So the way the people who are concerned from different countries can get together, and when they come together, they can do something. And decades later, in Karnataka, right here, when there was no law, there was no constitution working in Ballari, which Justice Santosh Hegde appropriately called as Ballari Republic, we thought that if we could take on the mighty Mrs. Indira Gandhi and what she did for the things, what about these small-time criminals who have taken our constitution and rule of law for granted? And there, the same methodology, a team of people committed. Justice Santosh Hegde, the most, I would say, remarkable Lokayukta that we have had here, the report he brought. Prashant Bhushan, who with such commitment, did in the Supreme Court, and we never thought it would, prohibit mining for one long year, and many other things. Now, for damaged environment and for people's lives who have been shattered, 30,000 crores have been set aside by the Supreme Court. In other words, if we believe in something and we go about it sincerely, it is possible is the lesson that, we have learned. I think I have spoken enough. So to my friend Ravi. He's a great storyteller.
Thank you, SR. First, a bit of information, and then a question for my dear friend. Those of you who have the book, look at the back cover. Those who don't can look at the poster over there. And in the poster, you will see there's a banner with the big letters, democracy. Look at M. There is a face behind M, which is very dark. You can't make out whose face it is. Happens to be another Kannadiga. There were lots of Kannadigas in our movement. Okay? And that is Surya Narayan Hegde, the nephew of Ramakrishna Hegde. Suri, as we called him, had the misfortune of being my neighbor. So whenever I needed to drag someone for a demonstration or any other work of IFD, Suri was there to be dragged. The other contribution he made was this picture on the cover of the Walk for Human Rights, and that's the poster he was talking about. That picture of Gandhi has also been drawn by Suri. Now, I have a question for you. You know, I think that almost everything that the worst things that happened during the emergency have been happening in the last 10 years. All of them. The emergency was over in about 19 months or 21 months, if you want to be technical. And this has gone on for 10 years now. Yet, we don't see the voice of conscience emerging abroad. I won't say in India because I know it is emerging in India. Whether you've heard about it or not, I know it is emerging. Abroad, it's not emerging. There are people there who are trying, like the Hindus for Human Rights or We the Humanity, it's We for Humanity, etc. There are others. So my question to you is, what is different? I mean, we didn't have any example really before us, other than the India League of America, which we knew nothing about. The present generation of the diaspora has an example before it. What do you think stymies it?
That's a very difficult question to answer because this is a book of history. I have studied or tried to study what they did, but I have not studied why a resistance is not building at this point of time in the diaspora, because there may be several reasons. You know, we can hazard several reasons. When they were protesting, the size of the Indian diaspora in America was just about 100,000. You know, I mean, around that. But now it's clearly, 43, 44 million. So it's huge.
4.3 million.
Sorry, 4.3 million. It's huge. So there's a huge difference in the number and the distance that the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth generations of Indians from then to now. These people were technically the first generation because after 1965, when legislation was loosened, by the Lyndon Johnson administration, a lot of Indians could migrate and settle down and be professionals there. And they were, I write about this in the book. They have an American dream, but their American dream is punctuated by an Indian dream. So they have a reference point back home. But probably the people, this is just a guess, I have to probably study it a little more carefully. Probably people now don't have a reference point back, and the reference points back in India have also changed. See, when they were working, development, rural development was at the center, applying technology. This book is also social history of a lot of small organizations like Freya or ICA or IDS. All of these organizations were thinking about what to do in India to improve the lot or improve the economy. But and people were discussing brain drain at that point of time. All these people were part of that debate. They had all migrated to the US. They were all intelligent people who had studied at IITs and first rank first, all through, and they'd all migrated. And the discussion back home then, people like just Bhagavati, the economist Bhagavati, they were speaking of brain drain tax, to tax all these people. That was the environment. And India was going through a food crisis. And something was playing on their conscience when they went there. They knew the situation back home. But the situation in India has also changed now. What do people in the West, who have migrated to the West, respond to in India? Those points of reference have changed. So it's about GDP. We were in fact joking with Mr. Nair is here of the CPM. One of his colleagues, Mr. M.K. Bhatt, who later became a communist leader in India, was at that time studying nuclear physics in America. And around 1970-71, after attending a seminar that Mr. Ravi Chopra had organized at Columbia University, and he has heard a lecture by a certain Singh, who's also a top economist teaching at Harvard, one of those Ivy League universities. And he says in his lecture that 10% GDP growth is possible in India. And the youngsters who are listening to his speech get very excited, and M.K. Bhatt is one of them. He decides to come back to India so that he can contribute to that 10% growth, but becomes a communist. No, that's a very interesting turn in his kind of life. But such points of reference back in India have also vanished. Things have changed there. In fact, I write somewhere that the diaspora, when they were there, was staring at a horizon of influence. They had still not become influential. But today, the diaspora in America is something else. They're independent of their mother country, although they claim a lot of things for political reasons. So there is no kind of umbilical coil, if one were to use a very emotional kind of line, that exists. There's this that absence exists. I really don't know. That's a very tough question. I hope some kind of thing happens where a lot of pressure, or this kind of similar pressure that they built, is sort of built to checkmate a lot of things that may be happening here or may not be happening here. Thank you.
Just a couple of points in response to what you said. Your first point, that there are 4.3 million people, then there should be many more protesters available in the US. Okay, so that's one possibility. But why I raised this question is that it was there in my mind. I got a number of answers after reading this book. So I would urge all of you to go back and read the book as soon as you can. Thank you.
I just want to add one small thought. See, one thing that I have learned is that when you take up a new challenge, that something is wrong and you don't agree with, the kind of help that comes from the most unexpected quarters has always amazed me. Like these friends, the team that came together, my wife and others. And similarly, when I was taking up this Ballari thing, most elders, including political, at least the conscientious political leaders, saying, don't take it, is very dangerous. There comes the greatest partner of my struggle in my life, our Kustgi, Raghavendra Kustgi. And it was so wonderful from Raichur. I didn't know him earlier and all that. And the kind of support you get from different quarters, I think what is needed is your sincere commitment and a willingness to try. Not worry about the results and all that, but if you do it in a humble, determined way, I think you will lead to at least small successes, if not the grand success. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to take a minute from you to inform that Bangalore was one of the centers of resistance. It was suggested that probably the story was mostly from northern part of India, Ravi Chopra, P.K. Mehta, D.C. Agrawal. No, I remember Snehata Reddy. She was nearly murdered in one of the police lockups in Bangalore. Lawrence Fernandez. Then C.G.K. Reddy, who was member of Rajya Sabha, then joined the underground and was charged by the government as part of Baroda Dynamite conspiracy. So, but as Sugata ji had said, it was not so intense. The brutalization of the masses was moderated. And as Chiranjeevi Singh ji said, Devraj Ar's kinds of chief ministers were there, who were not there to humor the powerful and the mighty in Delhi, like Sanjay Gandhi. They were having their own vision, their own mission, and they used the emergency for many positive things. And it is strange to come from someone like me that yes, there were a few positive things also. And finally, I want to thank Jo McGovern. She was a pillar of strength for Ravi Chopra, who was a pillar of strength for all of us. And she has come all the way to be part of, to witness this joyful evening. And we thank all others also. Some of my students are here who were not told this part of my story, because if the professor is having this kind of a background, why should we be there in the classroom? Why should we not be out there in the streets? So it is to the credit of Sugata that the new generation comes to know about the stories which have a 50 years gap. Thank you.
I think we should end. It's quite late. And I would like to, just because there was a mention of Jo McGovern, let me tell you, if there was one very positive outcome of the emergency resistance, it was they both falling in love, Ravi Chopra and Jo McGovern. And they fell in love during the walk for human rights between Philadelphia and New York. So you should read that fascinating account of the book. And the last point is Mr. Nambudri spoke about the southern characters. I think I also speak about one person from Davangere, Mr. K.S. Shripad Raju, who was, the keeper of papers, the writer of letters in the IFD. He comes across all through the book. So there are lots of southern characters there as well. So, with that, I really thank them. So it's a unique privilege for any writer to be with his, protagonists. My two previous protagonists, Rahul Gandhi and Mr. Deve Gowda, were not exactly happy with what I wrote. But then, Mr. Deve Gowda was a true Democrat, he accepted it. But Rahul Gandhi has not spoken to me ever since. So I'm really honored and privileged and very thankful that they have accepted what I've written, and I'm really honored. It's the honor of my life. Thank you very much.
ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗಮಿಸಿದಂಥ ಲೋಕಾಯುಕ್ತ ನ್ಯಾಯಮೂರ್ತಿಗಳಾಗಿದ್ದ ಸಂತೋಷ್ ಹೆಗಡೆ ಸರ್ ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ, ಚಿರಂಜೀವಿ ಸಿಂಗ್ ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ, ನಂಬುದಿರಿ ಸರ್ ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ, ಮತ್ತು KN ಹರಿಕುಮಾರ್ ಸರ್ ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ, SR ಹಿರೇಮಠ್ ಸರ್, ದ್ವಾರಕನಾಥ್ ಸರ್, ರವಿ ಚೋಪ್ರಾ ಸರ್ ಮತ್ತು ಆನಂದ್ ಕುಮಾರ್ ಸರ್ ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಮತ್ತು ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಇಷ್ಟೊತ್ತು ತಾಳ್ಮೆಯಿಂದ ಕೇಳಿ ಇದನ್ನು ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಷ್ಟೊತ್ತು ಉಪಸ್ಥಿತರಿದ್ದ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ, ಮಿತ್ರರಿಗೂ, ಹಿರಿಯರಿಗೂ, ಕಿರಿಯರಿಗೂ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು.